Chapter 377. Then shouldn't I thank you? Qin Mo's voice was very oppressive when he got closer. Fu Jiu wasn't afraid of him. She smiled and said, "What? Brother Mo, are you finally going to marry me? If you are Brother Mo, you don't need a dowry." Qin Mo glanced at the young man, raised his hand, and put on Fu Jiu's hat. "You should be glad that you are younger than me." Fu Jiu shook the hat on her head and watched the delicious skewers arrive. She could still smell the cumin on the skewers, which were a little burnt and dripping with oil. Who on earth proposed to eat skewers? Fu Jiu thought about it carefully and realized that it was her. She was speechless again. She had no choice but to turn her head and look at the lady boss. "When will my egg soup be ready?" Coming. The lady boss probably thought that the young man's depressed look was a little funny. She smiled so much that wrinkles appeared on her face. It made sense. Eating only egg soup at a place to eat skewers was indeed a little pitiful. Fu Jiu. "Lady boss, your smile is too obvious." Qin Mo only smiled and didn't say anything. He sat in front of Fu Jiu and ate the skewers. In order to distract herself from the meat, Fu Jiu decided to ask something serious. "Brother Mo, how many of the characters' skills and equipment combinations in Hero do you remember?" She wanted to know the Almighty's real strength so that she could cooperate with him. After all, Wild Games and the League were different. Qin Mo put down his glass and said two words very casually, "All of them." Fu Jiu didn't say anything. The table next to them burst into laughter. Some were shaking their heads, and some were shaking their heads. The general idea was that Qin Mo had gone overboard with his bragging. Everyone who played Hero knew that there were a lot of characters and skills in the game, not to mention all kinds of equipment. How awesome was this guy to remember all of them? Even if he went online to search for guides, he wouldn't be lying if he didn't have all of them. Fu Jiu also understood what they meant. She turned her head and smiled. She didn't care about these people. She believed that the Almighty didn't care either. But, how? It wasn't a problem for her to remember the skills. But when to use those equipment and how to match them? These things depended on experience, didn't they? Otherwise, there wouldn't be those technical guides to teach newbies how to play the game. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster, replying leisurely, "Study the physical attack data of the equipment and the character before combining them." "Do you want me to explain in detail?" As soon as Fu Jiu heard the word physics, she felt dizzy. "No, this method doesn't suit me." The Almighty was indeed different. Who would rely on analyzing physical attack data to play a game? How were people supposed to continue working as technicians? Thinking of this, Fu Jiu couldn't help but mutter, "A straight-A student is so straight-A even when playing games. How are we supposed to live?" Qin Mo listened to the youngster's voice, which was neither high nor low, and his smile deepened. "The meat is here again." The subtext of that sentence was, "You'll have something to watch again." Fu Jiu instantly understood the Almighty's black-bellied intentions. She raised her eyebrows handsomely, leaned over, pressed the man's wrist, and took a bite of the meat skewer in his hand. Chapter 378. Qin Mo froze all of a sudden. No one could not. While he was happily eating the skewers in his hand, he suddenly saw a fair and clean face with fine hair, thick eyelashes, and light-colored lips on the right side of his face. At that moment, he felt an inexplicable itch in his heart. The feeling from skateboarding came back. It was like a fluffy feather rubbing against his whole body from his right cheek. The gamers who were eating skewers at the side all looked in their direction. F***CK. What's going on? Did they drink too much? It was one thing to see their friends gay in the game, but how could they be so gay when they were eating skewers outside? They must be high. Let's rub our eyes. Fu Jiu took advantage of this moment to pull herself back to her seat. She had a piece of meat in her mouth, and her lips were still half-curved. She smiled handsomely and wantonly. "Sure enough, it tastes good." Chin Mo tilted his head and smiled. Then he leaned forward and pinched the youngster's chin with his fingers. That aura of abstinence made people's hearts race. If you dare to eat again, I promise I will have many ways to make you regret it, understand? Hey, brother Mo, this position is a bit close. Fu Jiu reminded him with a smile. Chin Mo sneered and slowly rubbed the youngster's chin with his thumb. Why didn't you say close when you leaned over? I almost kissed you. Fu Jiu laughed when she heard the last 4 words and replied, or brother Mo will kiss me back. As soon as she said that, Fu Jiu felt terrible. The Almighty was capable of anything. Why did he continue to provoke her at this moment? Sure enough, the Almighty didn't say anything. He just looked at her with a deep and dangerous gaze that made people's breathing slow down. The smell of barbecue lingered in her breath. Even the guys next door didn't move. She was going to die. That was the only feeling Fu Jiu had. She had to escape. When necessary, Fu Jiu's skills could be improved by 3 levels, like now. She tilted her head, then turned sideways. Her long legs didn't forget to hit a wooden stool to block Chin Mo's movement. However, she avoided the front and the back. The hat on her black coat was pulled. Fu Jiu bounced back like a spring. Because of the force, Fu Jiu's back crashed into Chin Mo's arms. If it was anyone else, they would definitely be locked on, but it was Fu Jiu. With a twist of his waist, he pulled his left hand out of his sleeve, then lowered his head and bent over. As his handsome face passed by, he pulled out his right sleeve. His movements were very handsome and neat, and even carried the sound of the wind. The people around them were indeed dumbfounded. Was this a transition from a homo movie to a martial arts blockbuster? Damn it, give them some time to accept it, okay? But how did he do it? With such good skills, he must have fought a lot. They were all men. Seeing such a scene, they all felt their blood boiling. They couldn't help but want to cheer for the young man. Great! Unfortunately, as soon as the onlookers finished saying, good. Chapter 379. Still want to escape? Chin Mo raised his eyebrows, and as he leaned forward, it became hard to escape. Coupled with the smell of alcohol on his body, the thick scent of sandalwood floated along with his movements. Fu Jiu knew she was going to die this time. She was so stupid that she forgot that the Almighty was drunk and shouldn't have flirted with him. At this moment, the Almighty was obviously not as rational as he used to be. He freed one hand and pressed on the youngster's shoulder. He originally wanted to teach him a lesson, but when he saw the person under him, his thoughts were all gone. All that was left was the warmth left in his memory. It was a very soft touch. What would it feel like if he kissed her? Or perhaps, he wanted to see the youngster panicking. The desire to destroy hidden in his nature seemed to become stronger when he touched the sweater under his hand. His eyes were as dark as the night. Chin Mo looked really handsome and noble. However, his family background was ruthless to the bone. That chiseled side profile and the toughness that surged out at this moment would make any woman's legs go weak. Of course, because of his appearance and the sounds just now, the barbecue shop owner thought that the 2 of them were fighting because they were drunk. She hurried over and grabbed Chin Mo. Hey, young man, let's talk this out. Don't fight. The barbecue auntie was very normal. She never thought that the posture just now could be a kiss. After all, they were 2 young men. Let go. The barbecue auntie grabbed Chin Mo with a face full of righteousness. Chin Mo looked sideways and paused. That expression was a little hard to describe. But Fu Jiu laughed, which made Chin Mo want to teach this guy a lesson again. The barbecue probably saw the meaning in Chin Mo's eyes, so she became very serious. You look like a big brother. How can you push him down on the table and beat him up? Chin Mo didn't say anything, mainly because the school tyrant Chin had never been taught such a lesson before. Fu Jiu laughed and said, Auntie, it's okay. We were just playing. The barbecue was confused. The barbecue was confused. That action just now didn't look like a joke. Fujio put one hand in her pocket. It was really a joke, right, brother? With that, she lifted her head and glanced over at Chin Mo. That handsome face of hers was asking for a beating. At this moment, Chin Mo had returned to his usual image of a rich young master. In fact, other than in front of the youngster, Almighty Chin would occasionally show his ruthlessness. In front of others, he would always be cold and aloof. Yes. It was a very indifferent word. The lady boss shook her head and said to her husband, nowadays, older brothers don't even know how to give in to their younger brothers. Chin Mo, Fujio couldn't stop laughing. She simply tilted her head on Chin Mo's shoulder. That furry head made Chin Mo hold it in for a long time before he pulled the young man over and beat him up. In front of outsiders, it was indeed necessary to give way a little. However, he also realized that this younger brother of his was the type of person who was more and more presumptuous. However, when she looked to the side, the young man's smile was too bright. It was like a warm afternoon, sitting at home with the window opened, and the clear halo shone down. Chin Mo didn't push the youngster away. He just stood there, cold and aloof. His whole body emitted an aura of abstinence. His black clothes and black eyes made him look like a devil. Chapter 380. After all, they were outside. Fujio didn't laugh for long. She still had to sit down and eat. But from then on, the lady boss would always look over at Chin Mo before she sprinkled cumin on the meat skewers. She looked like she was saying, I'm watching you. You better not bully your little brother. Fujio giggled. The gaming otakus who had been watching for a long time drank their beer. Damn, why was it that once a person was handsome, everything looked good? They absolutely didn't believe that these two were fine. But that wasn't the point. Instead, one of their phones rang, and there was only one message on WeChat. Are they afraid to come? That person showed the message to his friends. F*CK, motherf*Ker. Tell him, let's kill him. Isn't that a prick? But after saying that, they realized that they couldn't team up. They were short of one player in the 5v5 battle. The four of them looked at each other and remembered what the man in front of them had just said. One of them stood up directly and walked over to Fujio's table. Bro, I heard you say that you're good at games, right? That person had a cigarette in his mouth and thought that he was very handsome. After all, men didn't just look at faces, but sometimes. That person wanted to talk about temperament, but when Chin Mo looked up, he didn't know why, but his heart trembled a little. He coughed heavily, as if he was choking on the smoke. It seemed that even his temperament had lost. No, that wasn't important. He was here to invite someone. Chin Mo reached out his hand to block the smoke, and his voice was very calm. My brother's eyes are inflamed, and they can't be stimulated. Please pinch it out, sir. Probably because Chin Mo's aura was too intimidating, that young man really pinched the cigarette out. After that, his eyes widened. Wait a minute, why did he have to listen to whatever this man said? Fujio looked at that pair of bell-like eyes, and she could roughly guess what this person was thinking. It was too simple, and the expression on his face was obvious. But, no wonder she hadn't seen the almighty smoke these days. It was all because of her eyes. Fujio looked at Chin Mo from the side. The almighty was so nice, good-looking, and considerate. If they weren't so close, and he was so rich that she couldn't control him, she would have taken him home and raised him. But this was just a thought. The almighty was too smart, and it wasn't easy to trick him. I've put out the cigarette. What do you think? Do you want to fight? That person pointed behind him and said, there are 4 of us. You can just send one person. It's just enough for a 5v5. Fujio's hands itched at the mention of games. No, that's not right either. Rather than saying that she was itching to play games. It was more accurate to say that her hands were itching when she heard about electronic products. To think that a hacker like her wouldn't even let her touch a phone, let alone a computer. When will this pain in the eyes get better? Fujio was a little depressed. Chin Mo glanced at the youngster, emptying one hand to press down on Fujio's head, meaning to stop her from stealing. His eyes were on that person, and his voice was graceful. You haven't played the mobile version before. Was this a rejection? Are you kidding me? He had already snuffed out his cigarette, and this man still refused him. So what if you're handsome? Didn't you just say that you're so powerful, that you can remember all the skills and equipment? Now, you don't dare to attack. Fujio was still struggling. Now that he heard what that person said, the corner of his mouth twitched. She didn't die just now because the lady boss showed up. This person was definitely going to die. Chapter 381. Luckily, his friends were smart enough to know that Chin Mo wasn't someone to be messed with. They stopped their brother and explained, "Bro, we need someone to play the game. We're in a hurry, so the gangs are fighting." Gangs? Fujio raised her eyebrows. When did Hero have gangs? Unexpectedly, that guy answered seriously, not in Hero. It's a gang war between our number 2 middle school and number 1 middle school. We can only win and not lose. As a high school student from number 1 middle school, Fujio didn't know how to face them. Helplessly, that person didn't stop talking. He was very agitated. They suddenly invited us and provoked us on Hero. You saw it too. We only have 4 people now. We can't fight 5v5 with one less, so they went crazy. They think we're cowards. As the man spoke, he hammered the table heavily. How can our second high school be more cowardly than those nerds in first high school? All of them dress like country bumpkins and only know how to study all day. This is an insult to our second high school. That's right. The other 3 friends will follow suit. They looked like they were betting on their reputation. That attitude was very Chinibu. Facing such a passionate invitation, Chin Mo said slowly, "If that's the case, then I can't join you." Why? The young man glared at him again. Bro, even if my words were a bit harsh, this is an emergency. As a man, you should understand that we can't lose face at this time. We have to fight them. Chin Mo glanced at him and said in a low voice, "Because I used to be a student from number 1 middle school." All of a sudden, those 4 people were dumbfounded. They looked like idiots. They thought about what they just said. Those nerds from number 1 middle school, all dressed like country bumpkins, why did they feel like they were talking about themselves when they compared themselves to men? After all, the other guy was so handsome. But that wasn't the point. The point was that even decades ago, number 1 middle school and number 2 middle school were archenemies. Archenemies. Any boy who went to school knew what that meant. It was unlikely that the other guy would help them. Those 4 people looked at Fujio at the same time. Fujio still wanted to steal some meat, but under his gaze, the Almighty pushed her head away again. When Chin Mo was doing this, he didn't forget to deliver the final blow. He's even worse, he's in number 1 middle school now. But in an instant, the atmosphere in the barbecue house was quiet. Fujio looked at the 4 boys in front of her. Each of them had their eyes wide open and looked like they were choking. She wanted to laugh. Their naivety was too Chinibu. F***ck. That person tilted his head and didn't place any hope on this side. He said to his companions, "What should we do? Are we just going to let Lu Zongming bully us?" Hearing that, Fujio's hand paused. Who did you just say? Lu Zongming. This group of gaming nerds only knew how to spit out bubbles. You don't know the boss of your number 1 middle school? Boss? Fujio pondered over those 2 words and laughed. I do, but there's a grudge between us, so I can help you fight this round. There's a condition. If I win, you can treat us to our table. Why should we treat you? The gangster began to glare again. Fujio smiled and said, it's fine if you don't want to. It's just that the boss of number 2 middle school doesn't dare to accept the boss of number 1 middle school. F***ck, I'm so frustrated. Just when Fujio thought he was going to say something, the gangster turned his head. Let me see how much money we can gather. Chapter 382. After saying that, the four of them started to dig into their pockets. They were really trying to pool money. Brother, what you're doing is wrong. The gangster turned his head as he collected the money. We don't need anything from them. This is called loyalty. Fujio chuckled. I'm just a student from number 1 middle school, and I feel guilty helping you guys fight against number 1 middle school. How about you be a little more loyal and stop fighting? Please, brother, can you control your expression when you're talking about guilt? I can't see where you're guilty at all. The four students from number 2 middle school emptied their pockets, but they only had 80 yuan. They put it on the corner of the table and said, this is all we have left after we pay the bill. Fujio counted the things she wanted from the Almighty. 80 was enough, so she smiled faintly and said, give me a phone, let's begin. You don't even have a phone. Then why are we playing? The four students from second high school started to pull at their hair after saying that. Fujio raised her eyebrows. Borrow one from the lady boss. The lady boss is using a Nokia. You can't use it at all. It seemed that he often ate skewers here. He even knew what the lady boss used. Fujio also felt that it was a pity. She wanted to teach Lu Zongming another lesson. Of course, Qin Mo could see the youngster's expression. He frowned. What's wrong with Lu Zongming? You've blocked me before. Fujio was telling the truth, even though she didn't say the rest. When Qin Mo heard this, his eyes turned cold. He tilted his head and said to the second high students who were still scratching their heads, I'll do it. Really? The gangster's eyes lit up, and then he asked, are you sure you have a cell phone? Qin Mo didn't speak. He glanced at him, took out his phone, and played with it in his palm. The people on the other side all perked up. We're from Area A. Come in. You need to wait for 3 minutes, Qin Mo replied calmly. The gangster stared at him again, why? Download. Indeed, Qin Mo has never played mobile games. After all, professional leagues are controlled by computers. Seeing this, the four of them were a little worried. They whispered, it feels a little dangerous. He didn't even download the game. Will he fail? There's no other way. If this drags on, Lu Zongming will really think that he can do it. Someone said, if worst comes to worst, we'll protect him and let him use a healing skill. We don't have to count on him to kill people, but he can heal us. Alright. On the other side, the four of them were seriously discussing tactics. Fujio raised her eyebrows. Don't let the Almighty move to kill. This was really, very difficult. There was wireless internet in the barbecue shop, so it wouldn't take long to download a mobile game. Helplessly, the gangster already regarded Qin Mo as a bragging newcomer, so he looked at Fujio with pity in his eyes. When Fujio saw that he was about to enter his account number, she reached out her hand to stop him. She lowered her voice and said, Brother Mo, use my alternate account. Otherwise, they will go crazy when they see your name. Qin Mo didn't reject. Account password 135975280, password 000000, Fujio said after she finished reporting. Qin Mo clicked confirm and logged into the game. Chapter 383. Yes, of course. The other three were very serious. Talking about strategy with the Almighty? Why did Fujio feel like laughing when she heard the words of this group of Chinibyu? She did laugh, and the four of them looked at her at the same time, as if saying, "Why are you laughing at such a serious thing? This is a fight, and it concerns a man's face and reputation." Being stared at like that, Fujio felt that she should restrain herself, but she couldn't help it. Only God knew how funny their expressions were. She tilted her head and leaned on the Almighty's shoulder while laughing. Even her head was shaking. Chin-mo had just chosen his skill when he felt a burst of breath behind his neck, and his fingers froze. "Handsome, what are you doing? Come with us." The gangster never stopped talking while he was playing the game. Wherever the character tilted in the game, his body would tilt in the same direction. Those who didn't know would think that he was playing a racing game. "Oh my God, you almost hit me." Fujio watched from the side and wanted to laugh again. She thought, "Who else can I hit but you?" But she also realized that the Almighty didn't seem to be moving, so she wanted to look up at him. But before she could do anything, the Almighty reached out and pushed her head away. He pointed a finger at her, looking very handsome. "Move aside." The impact wasn't just a little. Chin-mo thought to himself that it was really troublesome to raise a little brother like this. Fujio saw that the Almighty didn't allow her to come closer, so she pulled her chair and moved closer to the gangster. She looked at the screen. "Don't go over, there's someone, run to the left." The gangster was still howling. He thought he was going to die, but after hearing the young man's words, he subconsciously ran to the left and escaped. He seemed to be relieved, and he quickly healed himself. At the same time, he saw on the map that Chin-mo didn't seem to be moving forward at all. As the four of them fought, they said, "Protect this handsome guy." "Got it. Got it." Obviously, they had already regarded Chin-mo as a newbie. "Let's all go to the middle lane and wipe them out." They were still talking about wiping them out, but suddenly a person jumped out from the bushes and used a stun skill and a deceleration skill. The four of them lost half of their HP in an instant. F***CK. The gangster's body moved again. "Hurry up and run back." What the F***CK is going on? This technique isn't Lu Zongming's at all. The gangster was right. This technology was indeed not Lu Zongming's technology. Instead, it was Fu Shiming who had returned to the esports world. Lu Zongming is cheating. After seeing the avatar, the gangster understood everything. They found a professional player to form a team. F***CK him. Fujio raised her eyebrows. "Professional player? The person who's chasing me is the most handsome guy in your school, Fu Shiming." That illegitimate child. Fujio's eyes paused for a moment. The gangster's body shook even more violently. As one of them died, he gritted his teeth and said, "How can we fight like this? Even a single pro player could probably wipe them out, not to mention a rookie on their side." Moreover, they had already lost one person. There were 3 people attacking the defense tower. They had to gather everyone on their side so that they wouldn't die too badly. "Wait a minute, then who is still on the way? Isn't that right?" The gangster took a closer look and saw that it was the handsome guy next to him. Chapter 384. However, in the next second, the gangster was shocked. Even his fingers were shaking. Because 2 words suddenly appeared on the screen, K.O. It wasn't the other side who KO'd them, but someone on their side killed the other side. They got the first kill. He couldn't be seeing things, right? The gangster rubbed his eyes, and the other 3 were also dumbfounded. Just like that, before the 4 of them could recover from the shock, they heard the special sound of the game, double kill. F***CK. The gangster couldn't help but widen his eyes. He raised his head and looked at Chin-mo. He saw that the handsome man pressed forward with his left hand, and the fingers of his right hand moved back and forth. The screen sped up beautifully, and he pressed a person to death. KO. Triple kill. The gangster was dumbfounded. The other 3 were also dumbfounded. They even forgot to press forward with their fingers. However, the one who killed them looked indifferent. He turned left and quickly ran back to the city. He waited for them at the city gate. Then, he emptied one hand and took a sip of wine. His voice was very calm. Why don't you continue to rush forward? The four of them woke up immediately. She unconsciously followed behind the man. The gangster was shocked, and the most depressing thing was that the man still had time to drink. But just now, he didn't even know how to move. Why did it seem like he had a cheat code? The gangster didn't understand, so he said, "Bro, I thought you were a noob when I saw your moves, but I didn't expect you to be so tough." Chin Mo glanced at him and said in a low voice, "It's not easy to play with a phone, so I need to get used to it." The gangster. You killed 3 people after you got used to it? F***ck, what kind of attack power is this? Do you think we will believe you? The teenager didn't believe it, but Fu Jiu did. The Almighty didn't play mobile games. In his hands, mobile phones and tablets were all tools for holding international conferences. There was one thing that Fu Jiu didn't know. If she hadn't leaned behind Chin Mo and affected the others with her breath, the Almighty didn't need to go back to the city to replenish his HP. On the other end of the phone, Lu Zhongming cursed fiercely, "What the hell? I took a drop of HP from the opponent. How did I die?" Fu Shiming was sitting beside him, his face was filled with arrogance. He had successfully taken down one of the defense towers and was very nonchalant. He probably bought a skill. Why do you care so much? I'll help you kill them later. He, young Master Fu is right. Lu Zhongming tried to curry favor with Fu Shiming. Young Master Fu wasn't here just now. Otherwise, that assassin in black would have died even if he had come 3 times. With young Master Fu around, they definitely wouldn't lose. It was just that they had been careless. So what if the other side was good? Could they be better than pro players? With this thought in mind, Lu Zhongming was ready to go on a killing spree. F***ck. It's Fu Shiming. The gangster's body began to shake left and right again. Hide, don't let him touch you. Chin Mo's voice was firm. He only said one word, kill. The gangster wanted to say, "Handsome, I am the commander of the battle. Shouldn't you be the one listening to me?" Chapter 385. The team battle began. Both number 2 middle school and number 1 middle school were attacking the middle lane. But these teammates weren't from the Supreme Alliance. And in the world of a Chinibu, once they decided to kill, they didn't care about anything else. Especially the gangster, he shouted, "Ah, ah, ah, ah," and rushed towards Fu Shiming's side. Fu Jiu was stunned by his voice effect, and it was too late for her to pull his arm back. They watched as he charged into the crowd. 5 people surrounded him in an instant, and he was instantly killed. Fu Jiu looked at the distance. The Almighty couldn't save him in time even if he wanted to. F***ck. You killed my brother. Do you think I don't exist? Another person went berserk and rushed forward. Fu Jiu held her forehead helplessly, and her silver hair fell between her fingers. Didn't they say they would fight with strategy? Was this their strategy? Kill him, yes, kill him. The gangster was dead, but he didn't forget to shout. The lady boss thought that something had happened, and she kept turning her head back. She saw a few people lowering their heads and playing with their phones. The gangster was too eye-catching. Luckily, there weren't many people in this barbecue shop. Otherwise, they would be surrounded by people with their silly looks. Double kill. Needless to say, another Chinibu died on their side. This time, the Almighty managed to make it, but someone was faster than him. With a bang, he jumped forward and was eliminated. Fu Jiu wanted to sigh at such a suicidal way of fighting. The Almighty didn't show any emotion at all, and he retreated to the defense tower with his handsome side profile. Handsome, what are you doing? Charge. The Chinibyu who hadn't been killed had red eyes, and he continued to die. Double kill. This time, the Almighty was the only one left under the defense tower. The operation of the phone affected his hand's speed. But Fujio could see that the Almighty had lost a drop of blood to save one of the suicidal people. He stood under the tower, intending to fight 5 at once. The gangster finally succeeded in resurrecting, and he was about to rush forward. But before he could move his fingers, the phone in front of him was snatched away for some unknown reason. "Hey! That's mine!" The gangster shouted at Fujio. Chin Mo's fingers moved a little. He thought to himself, forget it. Fujio has been very obedient these past few days. She probably can't resist touching her phone anymore. He could understand that a teenager in puberty would probably not be able to endure such a scene. Fujio really couldn't stand it. Even though she knew that the Almighty could stand in front of the defense tower and take on 5 people at once, she was still unhappy to see that scene. What kind of people were they? Did they think they were worthy of ganging up on a god? The gangster was completely shocked by the murderous look on Fujio's face. He didn't expect that the handsome guy who had been smiling just now would turn into a demon in the blink of an eye. His face was still the same, so handsome that it made them, who were talented but not good-looking, jealous, but his aura was completely different. It was like a sword that had been enlightened, and his whole body was exuding a sharp aura. "No, don't rush forward." The gangster shouted gloomily, "You are going to die." Fujio didn't even raise her head. "You also know what it means to die." The gangster was speechless. Why did he feel that this sentence was mocking him? He must be thinking too much. Yes, the situation was very serious. Chapter 386. Hey, those idiots on the other side are here to die again. Lu Zongming's eyes lit up with excitement. He pressed the phone screen with his thumb, and the bloodthirsty look on the corner of his mouth was obvious. Fu Shiming didn't care at all. He raised his chin coldly and arrogantly. "Kill the pig under the defense tower first." "It's so stupid." Lu Zongming smiled proudly. 5 against 2, they are dead for sure. Still rushing forward, they are sending their heads to us. The 2 people who had been killed by the Almighty whispered, "The person standing under the tower seems to be very powerful. Don't be afraid. We have young Master Fu." Lu Zongming turned on the voice message. "Let's go." Fu Shiming also said, "Don't worry, I can kill them alone." As soon as he said that, the others ran forward faster. The main thing was that the person standing under the tower seemed to have taken a step back, starting the chasing and killing mode. The Almighty did take a step back, but he didn't want to run away. Instead, he was waiting for the person who was about to catch up with him. Fujio. He didn't know if it was because he had seen the real person before. The gangster felt that the person standing next to the defense tower was very cool. He was a bit like an ancient king. Just standing there, he gave people a feeling of extreme handsomeness. It was just a few seconds. The gangster looked at the youngster's slender fingers turning over and over on the screen. Even when he was running forward, he didn't forget to change his equipment, and those attacking monsters didn't hit him. The gangster wanted to ask how the youngster did it. On the phone screen, the 2 handsome guys met. He was still staring at the screen, and he could clearly see that the person standing under the defense tower waved his long black sleeves and suddenly hooked a person with a long knife. The youngster accelerated and made a critical hit. That person's HP dropped by more than half instantly. The gangster shouted, "He wants to escape." But could he escape? The Almighty was blocking in front of him. The gangster really didn't know how the handsome guy did it. He turned his fingers, turned his head, and directly pulled back, KO. But this meant that the handsome guy's back was exposed to the enemy. Oh no! The handsome guy was finished. That was what the gangster thought. But the next second, he changed his mind. This was because the young man on his left had dived down and opened his arms to block the attack. At the same time, he couldn't give his opponent another blow. The gangster was really dumbfounded. Can games be played like this? This coordination was so F***ing cool. The two of them heeled together under the tower. Without any pause, Chin Mo waved his Grim Reaper's long knife again. The person who was about to ambush the youngster was instantly killed on the spot. Double kill. The expressions of the second-year middle school students could no longer be described with words. Every one of them had their mouths agape. Even in a 2v5 situation, they could still kill their opponents. Moreover, both of them were now fully healed. It sounded like a long time, but in reality, it only took less than 20 seconds. When the game's music started playing, Fu Ximing's expression changed. He pressed the phone and cursed, "Is there a hole in your brain? Get out of the way." Lu Zongming was still alive, but he wasn't at full health. The dead man was still in a daze. The speed was too fast. They really didn't know how they died. The most terrible thing was that every whip of the opponent was so accurate that it made people shudder. Chapter 387. That was the kind of fear that only people who were killed would feel. Fu Ximing thought that they were too stupid. What was so good about the other side? They didn't even dare to go out of the city wall. Two cowards. Who knew that as soon as he had this thought? The two figures who were still standing at the bottom of the tower jumped out at the same time and advanced side by side. They were so fast that no one had any time to defend against them. In the barbecue shop, nothing could be heard except the sound of the game. The gangster's expression at this time should be a close-up. After all, it was really hard to describe. How could they be so fast? And, why did these two people have such a tacit understanding that they didn't even talk to each other and just rushed out together? The youngster's operation was so beautiful that the gangster's mouth was wide open. Silver hair, black ear studs, and a green bean in his mouth. How could he be so good at fighting? Not to mention the handsome guy on the other side. He asked him in a low voice while fighting, "Which one is Lu Zongming?" The gangster felt that he had been ordered around the whole day, which made him depressed. The one with the golden armor. How strange. He could even see the coldness that surged out of the handsome man's deep eyes after he said that. Then the next second, Lu Zongming was killed. Annihilated. 3 kills. He had to say that the sound effect was really cool. Wait for me. The gangster learned from Fujio. He grabbed the cell phone of his friend who had just been resurrected and wanted to rush forward in a hurry. But he didn't know. As soon as he said that, the youngster spun his sword and jumped up directly. Even his black battle robe was shining with silver light. He used a sniper critical hit. KO. 4 people. 4 people had died on the other side. How long did it take? 21 seconds. The gangster really had an indescribable feeling now. Do you know what a game is? That was his account. That incomparably awesome person on the screen was his own account. Although he wasn't the one playing, that feeling was still awesome. How could his account be so cool? The gangster was so happy. But Fu Ximing wanted to curse. 2v5. 5 people couldn't beat 2 people, and 4 of them were killed by the other side in one shot? So noob. Even now, he still felt that his teammates were too weak. In Fu Ximing's heart, no matter how powerful the other party was, he was just an amateur. What's there to be afraid of 2 amateurs? He arrogantly ran to the bottom of his own defense tower. He didn't wait for his teammates to recover their HP. He stopped there and prepared to kill one of the 2 first. However, just as he was about to make a move, he was unexpectedly nailed to the spot by his opponent. Fu Ximing wasn't afraid. After all, he was in the pagoda, and the other party wouldn't dare to recklessly rush forward. Therefore, this was all his wishful thinking. The gangster saw the two wind-like shadows directly swept to the bottom of the tower and then stepped back. Even Fu Ximing was hooked out. Outside the defense tower, Fu Ximing had no protection. He wanted to retreat, but damn it, he couldn't leave. It was Qin Mo. He hadn't even used his ultimate move yet, so he directly sent it over and froze him in the middle. The gangster was also excited at this time. He clenched his fists. Kill him. Handsome, kill him. Chapter 388. Why? Why didn't he just kill him? The four kids couldn't understand at all. If he didn't kill him, the dead ones would revive. What was this handsome guy thinking? The gangster looked at Qin Mo, and there was no change in his emotions at all. But Fu Jiu knew what the Almighty was doing. He was helping her get back at him. After all, he was the son of San. Thinking of this, she even smiled a little. She cut off Fu Ximing's blood bit by bit. At first, Fu Ximing thought that his opponent's skills were rubbish and couldn't kill him. But when he recovered and was about to run away, he suddenly stopped. Another freezing skill came, and he couldn't move at all. F***ck. Fu Ximing cursed in a low voice. Fu Jiu began to jump over and cut off his blood, again with small cuts. The two kids sitting next to Fu Ximing weren't stupid. This guy didn't play like that just now. He used big moves. Fu Ximing's face turned ugly. Until he was frozen for the third time, everyone understood. Was he playing this way on purpose? Why did it feel like he was playing with them? The three students from number 1 middle school didn't dare to say this out loud. After all, they knew Fu Ximing's temper. Fu Ximing was about to explode. At the fourth time, he shouted, F***ck, how many times did he freeze? In fact, Almighty Qin didn't have many freezing skills. When he saw the youngster, he directly bought 10 to use first. That was to say, from the moment Fu Jiu touched the phone, Almighty Qin had made up his mind to torture Fu Ximing. This was also the reason why Fu Ximing could live until now. No matter how slow those four kids were, they could see that the guy next to them did it on purpose. After all, it was the fifth freeze. The gangster couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He began to feel lucky that he didn't fight with this handsome guy just now. This way of fighting, any man would suffer from internal injuries from anger. What the F***ck are you talking about? Hurry up and come over. Fu Ximing's face turned red. Just now, he arrogantly said that he could destroy the whole team by himself, but in the end, he was beaten up in all kinds of ways. This slap in the face was really embarrassing. The number 1 middle school students were also anxious. I still have 9 seconds, young Master Fu, please wait a little longer. Fu Ximing clenched his teeth. When he was frozen again, he threw it hard. The phone's screen shattered. There was a moment of silence. The game continued. The four of them didn't have time to talk. They were finally resurrected, so they had to rush forward. Fu Ximing pushed the other person away, took the other person's phone, and started to operate again. He had to kill the two of them. The gangster also realized that all of his opponents had been resurrected. In fact, they had also revived and were much faster than the other side. However, they were too far away from the other side's city wall and couldn't make it in time. He anxiously controlled his character. Stop killing. Come back. Come back. We'll all die together. Retreat? How could this be? The two of them worked together to extinguish the frozen one and directly rushed towards the four people. It was followed by hook, hit, and kill. The incessant light seemed to fill up the entire screen. The two figures, one at the front and one at the back, coordinated like the sharpness of a sword. He was simply killing people in seconds. Triple kill. Then, he turned around and bit it. What a beautiful kill. Then a blood-shaking game special effects sound came over. Team, destroyed. Chapter 389. The youths at the side were already dumbfounded. They stared blankly at the two words that represented victory. They were a little dazed. After Fujio finished the call, she threw the phone back into the gangster's hand. She stood up with one hand in her pocket, looking extremely handsome. I won. Go and pay the bill. If those who were speculating on the official Weibo that Supreme Alliance might not make it to the top 4 this year saw this, they would definitely shut their mouths immediately. Supreme Alliance, without anyone knowing, already had their most lethal secret weapon. That was Chin Mo and Fujio's joint main attack. The 4 middle schoolers at the barbecue shop were so shocked that they couldn't come back to their senses. The gangster pulled over a chair after paying the bill and said to Fujio, "How about this, handsome, take us as your disciples, and we'll take care of you when you go to school. I'm from number 1 middle school, you're from number 2 middle school." Fujio couldn't help but remind them, we're not from the same school. The gangster's eyes darkened, and he immediately said, our number 2 middle school is just next to number 1 middle school. Even though we're not in the same school, we can still protect you. You're really handsome. I'm not bragging, but the boss of your number 1 middle school has to avoid the 4 of us. Fujio looked up at him. Oh. Oh what? The gangster really couldn't understand the youngster. Are all gaming experts like this? Do you not understand the pain of reality? If you encounter any trouble in school. The gangster wanted to persuade him. Fujio interrupted him with a smile. What kind of trouble do you think I can get into with my skills? 1 sentence. The gangster choked at once. Of course, they still wanted to protect him. How could she have forgotten the way this handsome guy moved in the barbecue shop just now? Perhaps even the 4 of them wouldn't be able to stop him. Something was not right. Wait a minute. Are you really from number 1 middle school? Since when did number 1 middle school have such a good fighter? Fujio raised her eyebrows and looked serious. I'm a straight A student, so of course I'm from number 1 middle school. Alright, the gangster was convinced. After all, looking at the young man's appearance, he was indeed different from them. Today, thanks. Fujio chuckled. The 4 middle schoolers left first. Before they left, they didn't forget to look back. They wondered who these 2 people were. They could even kill pro players. They were too amazing. As for the rest, don't expect a bunch of Chinibu kids to have so many brain cells. After the gangster left, the barbecue shop was much quieter. Chin Mo turned his head and only glanced at Fujio. His eyes were full of mockery, and his temperament didn't change at all. Scholar. Fujio sat up straight. Compared to them, I'm a straight A student. Chin Mo smiled. Come here. What? Although Fujio was confused, she still went over. Chin Mo stretched out his hand and pinched that handsome face. He said faintly, let's see how thick my little brother's skin is. Fujio, Almighty Chin had said that he liked to see young men depressed. But in this position, the youngster's knee had touched him, and the face in front of him was too fair and beautiful. Chin Mo's eyes darkened, and he immediately retracted his hand, as though there were germs on the youngster. Fujio also paused because of Chin Mo's action. She raised her eyebrows slightly. Chapter 390. On the other side. Fu Shiming, who lost the game, kicked the wooden chair hard with his right leg. The opponent is definitely not an ordinary player. No one in number 1 middle school dared to speak. Fu Shiming couldn't swallow his anger. Lu Zongming. I'm here. Lu Zongming answered immediately. Fu Shiming narrowed his eyes. Go and ask who played this game tomorrow. Okay. Lu Zongming agreed, but he knew that it was not going to be easy. The students in number 2 middle school who weren't good at studying were always better than the students in number 1 middle school. How could he go to number 2 middle school to ask? But there were other ways, so he had to think about it. The night outside grew even darker. The atmosphere in the barbecue shop seemed to be frozen. Chin Mo couldn't explain why he suddenly flung his hand away. Then his phone screen lit up. It was Secretary Liang. CEO Chin, where are you? Chin Mo turned his head and said in a low and hoarse voice, "What's up?" "Young Master Han was worried about you, so he asked me to call." From Secretary Liang's words, Chin Mo knew that Han Feng was taking the initiative to ease the tension. He didn't say much and only gave Secretary Liang an address. Secretary Liang paused. "Then young Master Jiu who is going to pick you up," beep. Before Secretary Liang could finish, the other side hung up. Secretary Liang was sure that CEO Chin heard him, and he even paused for a second. But for some reason, CEO Chin didn't seem to be acting right today. Fu Jiu heard that Secretary Liang was going to pick her up, so she didn't say much. She raised her hand and drank the last sip of tea. With one hand in her pocket, she walked out of the barbecue shop with Chin Mo. It was foggy and cold outside. Luckily, it was almost Christmas, so the decorations in the shops along the street were quite warm. Fu Jiu saw that the Almighty didn't want to skateboard with her anymore, so she lifted her foot. When the skateboard flew up, she caught it and held it horizontally behind her waist. When Secretary Liang drove over, he saw such a handsome scene. Since they had a car, of course they would take it. Fu Jiu was close, so it took less than 5 minutes to get there. After the young man got off, Secretary Liang felt that the atmosphere in the car wasn't right, especially where Boss Chin was sitting. The neon lights were reflected on the car window. From the rearview mirror, Secretary Liang could only see a blurry side profile. His black hair fell down, covering his eyes. It was rare to see him like this. The reason why he suddenly pulled his hand back was because he wanted to lower his head to do something. However, even he himself did not know why he had such a huge reaction at that time. He could even see the astonishment on the youth's face. However, in the next second, that guy smiled as if nothing had happened. But Chin Mo wasn't completely fine. He reached out and rubbed his forehead. Perhaps it was because he had been paying too much attention to the youth recently. Even so, Chin Mo didn't sleep when he reached the Chin family. In the dark living room, he threw his jacket on the sofa and took out his phone. Naturally, he wanted to send the youngster a WeChat message. Chapter 391. Chin Mo's fingers paused. Then, he exited WeChat and tugged at his collar. He couldn't fall asleep. He glanced at the time on his phone. 11:05. Perhaps, he should learn from someone who had a younger brother. Although Chin Mo rarely attended business parties, he knew that Boss Lee, who liked to talk business, was definitely awake. He swiped his finger and called. Boss Lee picked up the phone quickly. Of course, it depended on who was calling. Boss Chin, what's wrong? Why are you calling me so late? Chin Mo didn't beat around the bush. Is it inconvenient, Boss Lee? Boss Lee smiled. It's convenient. It's about my younger brother. Chin Mo paused, his voice sinking along with the night. I want to ask Boss Lee. After Boss Lee heard Chin Mo's troubles, he immediately laughed. Really, all older brothers have the same troubles. Boss Lee, did you experience such a situation before? Chin Mo's eyes were deep, and it was hard to read his emotions. On the other side of the phone, Boss Lee didn't notice it. It was as if he had met a confidant. Let me tell you, when my brother just entered high school, I was most worried that the person who usually liked to follow behind me and call me brother would suddenly bring me a girl and ignore me as his brother. He even had to listen to that girl's orders. So, every time my brother got close to a girl, I really felt uncomfortable in my heart. There will always be such a stage. After all, an older brother is like a father. So that was the case. Chin Mo listened but didn't say anything. Boss Lee continued, as for the patience you mentioned, when my younger brother was in his rebellious phase, he insisted on breaking up with me for the little gold digger. I really wanted to beat him up, but in the end, I endured it. After all, he's my younger brother. As big brothers, we are very indulgent to our younger brothers. If the difference wasn't huge, there might be some arguments. I'm older than my younger brother by 10 years, so I gave in. What else could I do? You don't know, when he was young, I liked to tease him, touch his head, let him stand guard for me, I smoked, he. Chin Mo listened to Boss Lee's recollection with a calm expression, but in his heart, he was thinking about something else. Although there were many girls around the youngster, that guy wasn't the type to fall out with him over a gold digger. In comparison, his brother was still better. However, he would not give the youth any chance to get close to any woman. At the same time, this call successfully convinced Chin Mo. Not that he would have these feelings, every older brother would have. However, there was one essential difference between him and Boss Lee. Mr. Lee liked to rub his little brother's head and face when he was 6 years old. And Fu Jiu was already 17, Boss Lee hung up the phone, still feeling sympathetic. He pulled his wife and said, "Look at this young Master Chin who has shaken Jiang City, he's no different from an ordinary person when it comes to his younger brother." At the same time, at the Fu family. Fu Jiu, who had just come out of the bathroom, put a white towel over her head, and subconsciously reached for her phone. There was nothing. She looked at the desk again. Even her notebook was gone. How many more days do I have to live like an ascetic? Fu Jiu lay back. She thought about how the Almighty froze Fu Shiming and let her kill him bit by bit today, and her thin lips curled up. She had never been protected by anyone like this. Chapter 392. The lights dimmed. Fu Jiu, who was asleep, didn't know that the comments on the internet had started to change. It was all because of Callie. What happened today made them very angry. Lioli was the one with the darkest eyes. Fu Jiu's picking up of Han Susu messed up her plan, and she was kicked out of the Han family. Originally, she wanted to take advantage of Han Susu's anger to say something bad about Fu Jiu, so she didn't lose too badly. Unexpectedly, Han Feng didn't let them get close to Han Susu. He said that it was getting late and that they should go home early. In fact, his attitude wasn't like that. "Captain, what should we do now?" Before Lioli could speak, someone was holding a phone and said, "Wait a minute, look at this." It was an official post, right? Their previous posts were starting to have an effect. Someone had already started to say, "Although I like watching Spade Z play games, he is not a good person. He has such a bad temper. Yeah, his fans are also a bunch of brainless fans." That's enough. As soon as that person finished speaking, the post was deleted. Once it was deleted, that person was not convinced. "Admin, why did you delete my post?" F***CKU, the curses at the end were very harsh. Someone even comforted that person. "It's normal. My post was also deleted. I feel sorry for the original poster." What's more, someone left a comment saying, "It seems that someone left a comment to slander you. I think it has something to do with Spade Z himself. He has a problem with everyone. I'm a fan. Give up. I'm not a fan of Spade Z, but I'm a fan of the Supreme Alliance. I think the Supreme Alliance should reconsider whether to let Spade Z play in the national competition. To be honest, I've never seen anyone like him." It was because of these people that the Cali team was happy to watch. Lioli laughed. "What did I say? Some things don't need to be done by ourselves. We just need a little bit of encouragement, and people will follow." The Cali team was happy. This useless young Master Fu deserves to be scolded. Lioli glanced at the official post again. Unfortunately, the scolding is not enthusiastic enough. After all, these people are the minority, so we need to add more fuel to the fire. "Captain, Do you have any good ideas? Hearing this, the eyes of the Callie team lit up. Lioli touched the phone screen. Han Susu was the best at this, but it seems that we can only turn to the Fu family. The Fu family? Someone was confused. What do you mean by looking for the Fu family? Lioli lifted her lips lightly. We aren't the only ones who want Spade Z to leave Supreme Alliance. There are a few others, such as his half-brother, Fu Shiming. When Team Callie heard this, a smile appeared on their faces. Captain means to leave it to him. He has a good mother and knows how to use public opinion to create hype. Remember, there are some things in the esports circle that are no different from the entertainment circle. If something is said many times, it will become true. Find a time to send these posts to Fu Shiming. Be quick. No problem. Their Callie team was not a weakling. They would never let anyone bully them like this. Didn't Spadesy think he was so great just because he joined Supreme Alliance? Then they would think of a way to get him out. The next day. Chapter 393. Some time ago, thanks to the heavy smog, all the elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools in Jiang City had to suspend classes for 2 days. As a result, Fujio's biological clock was a bit messed up. When she sat up, she yawned lazily. When she turned her head, it was already 8:10. Their first class was at 8:30. And in the crazy number 1 middle school, if someone was late, the uncle guarding the door would record it. There were still 3 days before the national competition. She couldn't be disqualified because of such a small thing. Fujio washed her face very quickly. She didn't look like a girl at all. She put on her school jacket handsomely and skateboarded quickly through the crowd. 10 minutes left, Fujio calculated the time and suddenly stopped the skateboard. She looked in the direction of the school from this direction. The distance was too long. It seemed like she had to take a shortcut. There was a middle school student who rode his bike to school, but he didn't understand why the person in the same school uniform as him suddenly turned around and went in another direction. Class was about to start. Where was that guy going? No matter, he had to rush forward. He couldn't get a demerit. Swoosh! Fujio pushed off with her left leg, stopped the skateboard, and began to estimate the height of the school wall. That's right, Fujio was going to climb over the wall. There was an uncle buying roasted sweet potatoes at the back wall of the school. Seeing the young man stop at such a place and stare at the wall, the corner of his mouth twitched with a cigarette in his mouth. These kids are really... They can't even behave in school. It was a bit high. Fujio made a preliminary judgment and began to look for a foothold. Be careful not to get caught by your school director. The uncle reminded Fujio. She smiled and looked at her watch one last time. There were still 5 minutes left. That was enough. Just as Fujio was about to take a big step, a commotion came from the bustling crowd on the left. There were about 3 or 4 students from number 2 middle school, and they were surrounding a beautiful girl who was dressed like hooligans. That girl looked familiar. She had seen her yesterday. Fujio looked up at the wall on the left, and then at the situation there. Finally, she turned around decisively. The uncle was surprised. You're not going to climb. He's waiting to see this guy wrestle. Fujio waved her hand. I'll do it later. To be honest, Fujio only cared about this because of the Almighty. Based on yesterday's situation, that person with the surname Han should be the Almighty's friend. Since they're friends, I'll save them first. On the other side, Han Susu felt that she was extremely unlucky. She came here to warn Brother Jiang's fat stepsister not to have any other ideas about Brother Jiang, so she didn't bring anyone with her. She didn't expect to encounter such a thing. Get out of my way. Do you know who I am? How dare you treat me like this? Beauty, what's wrong with us? We just want to play with you, right? As he spoke, he reached out to grab Han Susu's hand. But just as he moved, a gust of wind came from behind him. Something was charging straight at the back of his leg, causing him to turn around in shock. Seeing that it was Fujio, that person was amused. "Look, I was wondering who it was. The useless nouveau riche is here to give us money again." Fujio indeed knew that person. In the past, she had been stopped in a corner and given money to him several times. Since there was a conflict between them, then there was no need to be long-winded. Chapter 394. Yo, as if you're so great. The people from number 2 middle school were amused by Fujio's words. Fujio's voice was indifferent. "You have two choices. Either you leave, or we start beating you up. Which one do you choose?" "Of course, we'll beat you to death." One of them had a ferocious look on his face. Han Susu looked at the handsome silver-haired young man, reached out to pull up the zipper of her uniform, and walked over. Even her smile carried a sense of ruthlessness. F***CKU. "You little scum, are you trying to rebel?" Before that person could finish his words, his knee was kicked hard. Fujio said 3 minutes, and she meant it. Her kick was high, and she used a lot of strength. 1 versus 4. One was already down. How could the leader let it go? While Fujio was still kicking, he grabbed Fujio's skateboard and wanted to throw it at Fujio's back. If it really hit, it would definitely be a serious injury. But it was Fujio, so how could she be hit? With a beautiful sidestep and a back kick, even Fujio's school uniform made a sharp sound in the wind. Bam! That person was directly kicked into the wall. The skateboard automatically returned to Fujio's feet. Han Susu watched from the side. She didn't know when it started, but the young man's figure was the only thing in her eyes. She had never seen anyone fight so handsomely. 2 people from number 2 middle school were kicked to their knees. The other one had bruises on his face, and the leader was dizzy. Fujio was unscathed as she held onto her skateboard. She had a faint smile on her face, and she was extremely handsome. "Who are you calling a little scum? I'll give you 3 seconds to leave, or I'll continue beating you up." The person who was kicked was really in pain. The 4 of them looked at the situation together. They had to call for help. "You motherf***ker, just you wait." The leader didn't forget to point at Fujio while running away. Fujio thought to herself, "I only have 2.5 minutes to go to class, so I won't wait for you." He turned around, got on the board, and was about to leave. Han Susu was still mesmerized by the young man's side profile, and her heart was beating so fast that it didn't seem to belong to her. Now that he was about to leave, she anxiously reached out and grabbed the young man's uniform, her face a little red. This time, I really have to thank you. It was my fault yesterday. How about I treat you to a meal?" "No need." Fujio pulled her school uniform back, her expression indifferent. "I helped because of Brother Mo." Fujio didn't want to have anything to do with this kind of girl. Although in Fujio's heart, all girls were cute. However, she would still stay away from this kind of person. Who knew that the more Fujio acted like this, the more Han Susu thought the young man was cool, and the more her face burned. Fujio didn't have time to care about these trivial things. There were less than 2 minutes left. He took the skateboard and clamped it under his arm. His long legs kicked the poplar tree beside him. Using the momentum, he leaped onto the wall. Beautiful. The uncle selling sweet potatoes applauded with a cigarette in his mouth. It would have been better if he hadn't applauded, but his clapping attracted the attention of the guard 700 meters away. The guard turned his head, and his eyes widened. He pointed at Fujio with his notebook. "You. The one standing on the wall. Which class are you from?" Chapter 395. The guard chased after them without saying a word. The students who were stopped outside the school gate were overjoyed. The ones who were writing on the wooden desks rose up. They didn't need to fill in the forms, so they ran while no one was around. The guard was confused. He turned left and right, but he didn't know who to chase. He could only widen his eyes and point. Stop! Stop! What he didn't know was that Fujio was leaning on the nearest pillar. She looked sideways at him and curled up the corner of her mouth, looking very evil. It was impossible to be late. But No. 1 middle school had strict management. The guard felt that this matter had seriously affected his work, and he had been talking to the dean about it the whole morning. This must be premeditated. They just want to be late. The guard said with a serious face, "The one who climbed over the wall is the best. He must be warned." The dean didn't even raise his head. "Which class is he from? What's his name?" The guard shook his head and said immediately, "But his hair seems to be silver." This was the dean's first reaction. This was the first reaction of the director of teaching. The dean was very cautious when dealing with Fujio. Not to mention that Fujio's grades were the best in the school, just looking at CEO Chin. CEO Chin. The dean's eyes lit up. He reached out and dialed Chin Mo's number. The teaching director's eyes lit up. He reached out and dialed Chin Mo's number. As a parent, CEO Chin gave him his private number last time. At the same time, on the top floor of the Chin group, Chin Mo, who was signing company documents, paused when he saw the caller on the screen. Secretary Liang was still standing next to him. He was very confused. That title. Dean of No. 1 Middle School. Since when did CEO Chin have the number of the school's dean on his phone? Hello. Chin Mo answered the phone while standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. The director of teaching told him the whole story. Climbed over the wall. Chin Mo raised his eyebrows because of this word, but his handsome face didn't change at all. After the director of teaching finished speaking, he said slowly, "Director Lee, are you sure it's my brother?" The guard said that the one who climbed over the wall seemed to have silver hair. In the whole No. 1 middle school, only Fujio hasn't dyed her hair back. Dean Lee, who didn't realize that he was being tricked, said this, and the guard still nodded. Chin Mo laughed. Seems like. In other words, Chief Lee was not sure either. This. Director Lee still wanted to say something. Chin Mo's voice was calm. My brother is so obedient and loves to learn. I don't think he would climb over the wall. Obedient and studious. No matter if it was Director Lee on the other end of the phone or Secretary Liang at the scene, after hearing this comment, they all wanted to ask Boss Chin if he didn't have a guilty conscience. That Fujio, who had so many leave slips, was obedient and loved to study. They don't read much, so don't lie. No matter how focused Secretary Liang was, Chin Mo didn't care. He continued to speak into the phone slowly. Or does Director Lee want me to attend a parent-teacher conference now? No. No need. As soon as he thought of that scene, Director Lee immediately sobered up. I'll check again. Yes, check again. It might not be student Fujio. Chin Mo laughed again. Then we'll wait for Director Lee to investigate before calling. Okay. What was there to investigate? Compared to CEO Chin coming to the parent-teacher conference in person, climbing over the wall was nothing. Director Lee muttered in his heart. What's more, there were no cameras, and there was no evidence. The person who climbed over the wall was too good at finding blind spots. After hanging up, Chin Mo glanced at someone's WeChat on his phone. His brother was really something. Climbing over the wall. Secretary Liang looked at his boss, but his eyes never left his phone. He hesitated and asked tentatively, CEO Chin, do you need me to send someone to the school? No need. Chin Mo's fingers slid down, and he threw his phone back. His side profile was cool and handsome. This action made Secretary Liang realize something again. Ever since yesterday, Boss Chin had been acting strangely. When he wasn't holding his phone, his eyes would glance at it. When he picked up his phone, he would immediately put it down, as if he was controlling himself. What was going on? Fujio didn't know that the director of teaching had reported her to the Almighty. She was sitting in the back seat, yawning lazily. But those students from number 2 middle school who had been taught a lesson by her couldn't take it anymore and told their boss. That boss was still playing hero on his phone. When he heard that his people were being bullied, he got angry instantly. How dare you challenge the authority of our number 2 middle school? Call for help. Stop him. Just like that, when the students of number 1 middle school got out of school, they saw more than 10 students from number 2 middle school standing outside the school gate. Lu Zongming thought that these people were here for him. As the boss of number 1 middle school, he didn't even dare to step out of the school gate. Since those people were standing in front of the school, the guards didn't dare to interfere. Some girls would feel scared when they saw such a scene. After all, there were a few people on the other side, and they were indeed very arrogant. When Han Susu asked the driver to drive her over, she saw this scene, and her eyes suddenly widened. Those people were obviously from the morning. Han Susu wanted to get out of the car, but she was afraid. There were more than 10 of them, and her driver was old. These people were definitely here to cause trouble for the young man. Han Susu changed her mind, sat up straight, and said to the driver, "Don't wait here, go straight to the school gate." She had to inform the young man. However, cars needed to be registered in number 1 middle school. That was the opening. Fujio had already walked over from the other side of the school's main road. He was still in his school uniform, with long slender legs, silver hair, and a handsome face. Han Susu felt that her heart was beating abnormally again. Among so many people, only the young man seemed to be colorful. What was not perfect was that there were too many girls following behind him. Han Susu looked at the girls surrounding Fujio, and her eyes sank. Forget it, which school didn't have love-struck girls? The most important thing now was to make sure the young man didn't go out. As soon as she opened her mouth, she saw the group of people outside the school start to move. Some of them saw Fujio and were about to walk over. They were very aggressive, and they were pushing people around randomly. Fujio stopped in her tracks. She didn't look at Han Susu, but walked past her and looked at the movement not far away. Motherf **Kur, I finally see that little trash. The person who was kicked in the morning looked more ferocious than anyone else. He wanted to punch Fujio flat. Fujio's eyes shifted to the road on her left. If it weren't for Fujio's action, Han Susu wouldn't have noticed that there were people there. She was still in a daze. Chapter 396. By the time Han Susu realized what was going on, her legs had already obeyed the young man's order and walked inside. When he turned around, he could only see the back of that tall and straight figure. The students of number 2 middle school were obviously people who often fought, and they knew how to surround people. Left, right, front, and all 3 directions. Unless that little weakling retreated, he couldn't escape from any direction. But even if he retreated, he had to come out and go home. That person wanted to block him here and catch him. But this method was suitable for others, but not for Fujio. First of all, she didn't want to retreat. The girls were all here, so she had to let them go first. What's more, others couldn't avoid this seemingly tight encirclement, but it didn't mean that she couldn't. After all, apart from Fujio, she was Z. Even the police couldn't catch her, Z. The number 1 middle school gate was bustling. That kind of scene couldn't be described with words. There was definitely going to be a fight. The guard was already making a phone call with trembling fingers. But Fujio just stood there with a lollipop in her mouth. She pulled open her school uniform and put the cap on her head. There was a camera in front of her. Even if there was a fight, she had to pay attention to the evidence. She had to maintain her good behavior and avoid calling her parents. That guy from number 2 middle school saw that this guy didn't retreat, so he shouted at the boss who was still looking around, "Brother Who, it's that guy. Over here, at the school gate." That boss turned around, and his fiery eyes met the young man's handsome face directly. Then, he was dumbfounded. What the F***ck, wasn't this the master who helped them play games yesterday? What did he mean? He was the one they were going to beat up. This was so F***king embarrassing. Fujio also recognized him, and her beautiful eyebrows raised. Troublesome Chinibu. Number 2 middle school's boss. What the hell is troublesome Chinibu? F***cku. Someone next to Fujio wanted to jump up. The troublesome guy blocked with his arm in a very professional manner. Stop, stop. What's going on? Not only the students from number 2 middle school were at a loss, but even the girls from number 1 middle school, who had their hearts in their throats, paused. The gangster coughed heavily and approached Fujio very seriously. He lowered his voice and said, "Did you beat up our people this morning?" "I did." Fujio's thin lips curled up, and her eyes were filled with coldness. "Why? You want to fight back?" The gangster looked at the teenager and thought of the beautiful skills in the barbecue shop and the other man's abuse. Somehow, he felt a chill down his spine. "Why would I? I'm just asking." Although the gangster was Chinibu, he was very loyal to his friends. He turned around and said to his little brothers, "Let's disperse for today. This is our second middle school's benefactor. In the future, be more polite when you see my benefactor. Otherwise, you're making things difficult for me, Wang De-hu." How could someone who was beaten up in the morning accept such an ending? Benefactor? The girls from number 1 middle school were also puzzled. When did their Highness Jiu become the benefactor of that old vulgar Wang? These two people know each other. They even played together before. Her temperament didn't match her at all. Wang De-hu, who was standing next to Fujio, really didn't match. Wang De-hu was the real bad student, and it was written all over his face. Fujio, at least looked like a straight-A student, the kind that was well-versed in physics and chemistry. Come and say thank you to our benefactor. Wang De-hu is the best. Chapter 397. Thank you, benefactor. There were more than 10 young men, and their voices were so loud that Fujio wanted to facepalm. Anyone who saw this would think that he was recognizing a new boss. Fujio looked at the gangster. "Oh no, he should be called Wang De-hu now. I'm just helping you play a game, that's not a simple game." The gangster said with a serious face, "It's related to the honor of our second middle school." That's right. There were actually people who echoed from the side. This was the world of Chinibu. Fujio found it funny again. She lifted the corner of her mouth and put one hand in her pocket. She made a detour gesture with the other hand. "Ask the people from second high to leave. You're all standing here and scaring the girls." "Did I scare the girls?" Wang De-hu's face was full of disbelief. "How did it scare them? We're so handsome." Fujio. It seemed like these Chinibu kids were way off base when it came to being handsome. "No, benefactor, I will tell you a secret." Wang De-hu said in a serious tone, "Every time we make a move like this, a lot of heads turn to look at us. Aren't the girls from number 1 middle school good looking? But when we go out alone, they don't think much of us. This time, everyone is so enthusiastic. To be honest, part of the reason is to stop you, and the other reason is to let the girls admire our handsomeness." Fujio. "Oh. What does "oh" mean?" Wang De-hu felt that communicating with cultured people was tiring. Fujio looked at his ferocious look. Without saying a word, she turned around and walked over to a girl. She said in a gentle and pleasant voice, "Were you scared just now?" The girl blushed. She nodded her head and said excitedly, "With Highness Jiu here, we are not afraid. Be good." Fujiu smiled faintly. After saying that word, she walked back and said to Wang Dahu indifferently, "This is what you call handsome." Wang Dahu, damn, no girl had ever blushed in front of him. This gap was a critical hit. Wang Dahu didn't want the girl to be afraid of them, so he turned around and asked his brothers to disperse. "When you leave, be gentle and smile." "Smile? Boss, didn't you say that you want to be cool?" Nowadays, girls like to be cold and aloof. When Fujiu heard this, she raised her head silently. Wang Dahu replied in a low voice, "I'll ask my benefactor about this. You guys go back first and wait for my news." "All right." In the eyes of some students, Fujiu's move just now was indeed amazing. Disbanded just like that? The guard was still dumbfounded. Wang Dahu said to Fujiu seriously, "Benefactor, please advise me on how to pursue girls in the future." "Sure." Fujiu's voice was indifferent. Wang Dahu felt that he had taken advantage of the situation. He then heard Fujiu say, "Your second high school's curriculum should be the same as our first high school's, right?" "Yeah, the progress is the same." Wang Dahu wasn't wary at all. Fujiu chuckled. "That's good. I'll leave my homework to you in the future." Wang Dahu was speechless. What happened to being a cultured person and a top student? What, you don't want to? Fujiu looked at his expression and raised her eyebrows with a smile. Wang Dahu gritted his teeth. "Fine. Everything is for the girl. Seeing that you are so sincere, I'll teach you a secret technique to pursue girls." Fujiu crooked her finger. It was indeed cool. Wang Dahu moved closer excitedly. "What secret technique?" Fujiu only threw 2 words at him. "Good looks." Chapter 398. 10,000 Critical Hit. The people next to Wang Dahu looked at the frozen Wang Dahu, and they didn't know what Fujiu said to him. But seeing Wang Dahu being subdued by the young man, those who were prejudiced against Fujiu now became quiet. After all, some people were like this, susceptible to the soft approach and afraid of the hard approach. They were waiting to see Fujiu get beaten up. But who would have thought? Wang Dahu seemed to have his claws removed in front of Fujiu. Not only did he not fight, but he also seemed to respect Fujiu. Compared to Fujiu, some boys were even more cowardly. On the same day, someone posted Fujiu's picture on the school intranet. The title was, "One Man Against 1,000, Our Number 1 Middle School's Most Handsome School Hunk." There was a string of comments below. After all, from that angle, Fujiu did look very picturesque, and it even gave people the illusion of a scene that only appeared in comics. Fujiu's actions of protecting the girls could only be understood by those who experienced it themselves. Among them, the most obvious change was Han Susu. She looked at the young man who was still talking to Wang Dahu. Her heart was beating fast, and even her breathing seemed to be slower than usual. Her brother was right. She shouldn't just listen to Sister Lioli and think that the young man was bad. Even if he looked like a tasteless nouveau riche in the past, it was different now. Han Susu looked up, and her eyes were full of infatuation. Lu Zongming was still hiding at the school gate. After hiding for a while, seeing that everyone was back to normal, he grabbed a classmate and asked, "Where are the number 2 middle school students at the school gate?" "They all left." "Left? Why?" Fujiu was there alone, so they didn't dare to move. "I think it was because Fujiu helped them play a game or something, but I don't know the details." "Game?" Lu Zongming instantly remembered the scene of their team being wiped out yesterday, and his eyes turned red. Fujiu, the traitor of number 1 middle school. He didn't say anything and immediately told Fu Ximing the news. At the same time, Fu Ximing also received something from the Cali team. When he saw that, number 1 middle school's hunk, post on the school intranet, Fu Ximing felt a surge of resentment that couldn't be released no matter how hard he tried. He didn't know when, but that good-for-nothing had suppressed him in every way. Study, Study, he did better than her. Games, he played better than her. Now, even the title of #1 middle school's hunk was being applied to that person. How could the spoiled Fu Ximing endure this? Now, he had these things in his hands. Fu Ximing glanced at the message on the screen and handed it to his mother without hesitation. Chapter 399. Captain, there's news from Fu Ximing. That night, the Cali team sat in front of the computer and looked back. Lioli stood up. What did they say? What else can they say? Everything is as Captain predicted. Fu Ximing wants that useless young Master Fu out of Supreme Alliance even more than we do. He even asked us to continue posting, and tomorrow, the entire esports industry will know about it. Fu Ximing smiled, his expression indescribable satisfaction. That's right. Lioli looked down. In this case, Fu Jiu is really finished. Who cares if he's finished or not? Captain, I know you are soft-hearted. Think about it, if it weren't for Fu Jiu, would our relationship with the Supreme Alliance be so tense? When he's gone, we can slowly repair our relationship with the Supreme Alliance. Lioli listened to her teammates and seemed to be convinced. Well, that's all we can do. In fact, she was the one who came up with the idea. How could she be soft-hearted? She just had to put on a show. There were only 3 days left before the National League. It was just the right time to kick Fu Jiu out of the Supreme Alliance. A newbie would die if she was too strong. If she didn't even understand this, how could she be in the esports circle? Lioli lowered her eyes. It was time to end the Qin and Tao couple. Even if that man wasn't hers, he shouldn't be anyone else's. The night was getting darker and darker. The lingering fog had almost become a synonym for Jiang City. Han Feng really didn't understand his sister. Yesterday, she said that Fu Jiu was narrow-minded. Today, she said that she must treat Fu Jiu to a meal. One was to apologize, and the other was to thank her. If it weren't for Fu Jiu, she wouldn't know how badly she would be bullied now. Han Feng also wanted to find a chance to sit down and talk with Qin Mo. Now his youngest sister had given in and was even pestering him. If he didn't call, Han Susu would make a fuss upstairs. Han Feng shook his head. First, he sent a letter to Qin Mo through Jiang Zhua, saying that he must bring Fu Jiu and that the siblings would apologize in person. When Qin Mo answered the phone, he stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the lights of the entire city. Qin Mo, are you still there? Jiang Zhua hadn't gotten a reply for a long time, so he thought the discussion wasn't going to go through. Unexpectedly, Qin Mo spoke in a calm voice, I'm going to the Fu family's house to fetch that guy. Tell me a place. Jiang Zhua told him the address before hanging up. He had a vague feeling that something was wrong with his friend today. It was just that he couldn't tell exactly what was wrong. Qin Mo retracted his gaze. If he suddenly appeared at the Fu family's house, a certain someone would be in a daze with a lollipop in her mouth. He couldn't help but smile. Secretary Liang was watching from the side. Maybe one day. Boss Qin had never smiled before. Was he wearing this expression because he was going to the Fu family? He really wasn't thinking too much. It was because Boss Qin was too obvious. Most importantly, President Qin, have you considered the Fu family's ability to accept you going to the Fu family just like that? When Secretary Liang saw that his CEO was leaving, he subconsciously wanted to follow him. Qin Mo was indifferent and abstinent. He wore a well-ironed suit on the inside and a pure black windbreaker with a circle of velvet on the outside. He looked like a vampire aristocrat that often appeared in foreign movies. His skin was fair and his eyes were deep. He turned back and glanced at him. Chapter 400. The atmosphere in the Fu family was weird today. That's right, it was weird. He Honghua wasn't cooking soup in the kitchen or walking around in her bright red pajamas. Instead, she was sitting on the sofa obediently. Fu Jiu saw this when she came downstairs. She looked up at the person sitting in the living room and paused. Brother Mo? Alright, she finally knew why her mom was so obedient. The Almighty's aura was really strong, especially when he was wearing a black trench coat. But why did the Almighty come without telling her? At this hour? Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows in that direction. Her mom pulled her to the side and said in a low voice, CEO Qin brought me a lot of supplements. Jiu, do you think I should take them? It wasn't a betrothal gift, why was her mom so nervous? Yes. Fu Jiu was never polite to Qin Mo. After saying that, she sat down next to Qin Mo. Why are you here so late? Qin Mo glanced at the youngster. Jiang City had started heating up, so the house was so warm that Fu Jiu was only wearing a pure white sweater, and her face was a little pink from the heat. At such a close look, the clean and fine hair on her side profile was even more obvious. Qin Mo's eyes darkened, and he leaned over and said in a calm voice, Nothing, I just wanted to ask a self-proclaimed top student about climbing walls. Fu Jiu. Almighty, don't you know you'll die if you keep chatting like this? How did it feel to climb walls? His tone sounded like he was talking about the smog today. Fu Jiu coughed lightly. I just took a shortcut. And then you saved a beauty. Qin Mo's voice always sounded especially magnetic and deep in her ears. Fu Jiu touched the bridge of her nose. That was along the way. Along the way, you became the new boss of number 1 middle school. Qin Mo looked at the youngster and lifted his thin lips slightly. Amazing. Fu Jiu smiled evilly and put her arm behind the sofa. What can I do? I'm so handsome after all. Since you're so handsome, I'll check your physics results myself next time. Qin Mo stood up and looked down at the youngster. Then he turned sideways and said to He Honghua, Auntie, since he's here, I'll take him away. If it's too late, let him sleep at my place. Take him away. Fu Jiu was dumbfounded. What was going on? He Honghua was also shocked, but she was shocked by the word sleep. Her expression changed, and she immediately said, No, my Jiu can't spend the night outside. He Honghua's reaction was too big. The whole room fell silent. Even Chen Xiaodong didn't understand why Madame was like this. When Qin Mo turned to look over, only then did He Honghua realize that she had gone overboard. She hurriedly explained, No, I'm saying that Jiu's eyes have just recovered. It's not good to go back and forth like this. Moreover, Jiu has classes tomorrow. Coming up with such a reason was putting He Honghua in a difficult position. Her round face blushed as well. Before Fu Jiu could help, Qin Mo replied, I didn't think it through. Auntie, don't worry. After everything is over, no matter how late it is, I will send him back. Perhaps it had something to do with his birth. Even when Qin Mo said such words, his nobility didn't seem to diminish. But He Honghua was already very happy. The more she looked at this young Master Qin, the more she liked him. Many people didn't want to play with her Jiu, so they all went to the Fu family to play with Fu Shiming. Chapter 401. Fu Jiu really didn't understand. The Almighty just said something soft. Why did her mother push her to the Almighty as if she was a gift? This was really her own mother. Fu Jiu also witnessed the Almighty's charm from a young age to an old age. Her mother turned into an anti-fan in an instant. As soon as Fu Jiu walked out of the door, she said to Qin Mo, People who don't know would think that you are my mother's son. Obviously, I look more worry-free than you, wall-jumping scholar. Qin Mo tilted his head and looked at the youngster. He raised his hand to unlock the car and raised his chin, indicating for her to get in. Every time she heard the Almighty call her a scholar, Fu Jiu always felt that she couldn't continue this conversation. After the two got in the car, Qin Mo didn't start the car. Instead, he tilted his head and looked at the youngster on his right. Fujiu raised her eyebrows. What? Qin Mo looked at the youngster who was wearing a black mask, revealing only a pair of eyes. Inexplicably, he found this guy adorable. Fujiu saw the playfulness in Qin Mo's smile. Just as she was about to say something, she saw the other person suddenly lean down. The sudden scent of peppermint and sandalwood seemed to invade every cell in the car, slowly spreading in the car. Fujiu paused unconsciously. Those thin lips brushed past the side of her face at a subtle distance. His body was very close. Fujiu looked at the Almighty who was helping her fasten her seatbelt. His temperament was indifferent, and his side profile was so handsome that it could make people fall head over heels for him. Fujiu subconsciously shrank back a little. She didn't completely lose herself in his beauty. After all, at this distance, when the Almighty pulled his hand back, his elbow would easily touch the awkward position in front of her chest. Even with the bandage, she was still worried that the touch would be different. A man's chest was hard, and hers. It was hard to say. When Qin Mo pulled his hand back, he raised his eyebrows. He seemed to be very interested in the way Fujiu breathed. Even his thin lips were curved into a smile. Fujiu raised her eyebrows. What was the Almighty smiling about? Hurry up and return to your normal sitting position. Qin Mo didn't move. Fujiu simply moved. She leaned over and wanted to blow into his ear. Qin Mo was a step faster than the youngster. He returned to his seat abruptly and glanced sideways. Behave yourself, understand? Fujiu smiled and winked evilly. Qin Mo didn't bother with this person who always made his emotions fluctuate. He started the car. When the Hummer drove out, the fog in Jiangqing became thicker. Han Susu had never been as jumpy as she was today. She sat up straight and looked outside, then asked her brother and Jiang Zhua if her dress was pretty. Jiang Zhua was a smart person. He raised his eyebrows and smiled. Qin Mo and Fujiu walked in one after another. Even Jiang Zhua didn't know why, but he felt that when the two of them stood together, they complemented each other and were equally handsome. After Han Susu saw the young man, her heart beat even faster. She walked up to Fujiu and said softly, "Thank you so much for today. You didn't want to tell me your phone number, so I could only contact you through my brother. I'm really sorry for what I said to you before. I hope you can forgive me." It was obvious that Han Susu had put in a lot of effort today. Her perfect makeup and face were indeed eye-catching. Chapter 402. Seeing this, Jiang Zhua smiled at Qin Mo and said in a low voice, "Susu must have fallen for your little brother. She doesn't even want to eat or drink, and she is so shy when she sees you. You know, the two of them are about the same age, so it's quite suitable for them to be together." Suitable? Qin Mo's thin lips were still curled up. He always looked like this, whether it was in the business world or in their daily meetings. His handsome side profile didn't change much. He was noble and domineering, a standard soldier. But this time, Jiang Zhua felt that his smile was a little different, but he couldn't tell what was different if he had to say it. Strangely, the surrounding temperature seemed to have dropped by several degrees all of a sudden. Was it because the heating here wasn't good enough? On the other side, Han Susu was still expressing her regret, hoping that the young man would look at her. Even if it was just a glance. Finally, she got her wish. Fujiu looked up and said, "You should thank Brother Mo." Han Susu felt that the young man was super cool, especially when she thought of how he stood in front of her at school. Her heart started to beat erratically again. She automatically ignored the reason why the young man saved her. No matter what, the other party had forgiven her. Han Susu smiled and followed Fujiu into the private room happily. Although this meeting was also in an entertainment venue, it wasn't as noisy, and there were many types of alcohol. The sound of piano could be heard outside the private room, and inside, people were singing, steaming, and eating. It was a high-class private club. As soon as they entered, Han Susu pulled the young man to sit by the song selection table. Let them chat like big brothers. What do you want to sing? I'll help you. Fujio glanced at the Almighty, and indeed, the three of them seemed to have something to talk about, so she didn't go over. Chin Mo sat in the dim light, his posture lazy and abstinent. His tie was already untied, and it was crooked. His eyes unconsciously looked at the young man and woman who were ordering songs. He tilted his head and lit a cigarette, as if this was the only way to suppress the inexplicable stuffiness in his chest. The stuffiness came for no reason. Bit by bit, it seeped in, and as the song overflowed, it accumulated more and more. In order to dispel this irritation, Chin Mo turned his head and focused his attention on Han Feng, who was speaking. Susu, I can't control her anymore. Han Feng glanced at the other side and smiled. You insisted on making me make this call. It seems that it's not just because you know you're wrong. After being saved by your brother like a hero, even your character has softened a lot. Chin Mo didn't say a word. He raised his hand and drank the wine in the glass, his eyes a little gloomy. It seemed that this was the only way to suppress things that were getting more and more out of control. But reality proved that some things could not be suppressed at all. Han Susu had never been a calm person. She sat there and smiled, asking Fujio what she liked. Chin Mo found the voice a little ear-piercing. Someone once said that the Han family's Missy had a good voice and was very good at singing. It was just that she didn't want to enter the entertainment industry, and the Han family wouldn't allow her to do so. Chin Mo used to think that her voice wasn't bad. But that was not the case today. Especially when the young man turned his head to smile at her. Chapter 403. He was starting to think, it wasn't a good idea to agree to bring the youngster here. Chin Mo tried to distract himself again. It was to prevent himself from grabbing the youngster and running away. Suddenly, for some unknown reason, he just hated girls. Any girl who got close to the youngster would be an eyesore. Even Han Susu was the same. And Chin Mo knew very well that many high school students in puberty liked girls like Han Susu. She dressed beautifully and acted coquettishly. Would his little brother like her too? With this in mind, Chin Mo's eyes dimmed. Jiang Zhua seemed to have realized something as he turned to look over. He saw Chin Mo's deep eyes staring at the youngster's side profile. It was so deep that it didn't seem like his usual self. That gaze, Jiang Zhua didn't know why, but his heart skipped a beat. He must be overthinking. Seeing Chin Mo look away without changing his expression, Jiang Zhua thought that he must be overthinking. But Chin Mo had been possessive since he was young. He probably couldn't bear to see the little brother he finally recognized become someone else's. Luckily, Fujio didn't stay with Han Susu for long. After she was done, she walked over and looked at him with a bright smile. Brother Mo, what do you want to hear? Looking at that clean and harmless face, his boredom seemed to be dispelled by this kind of light. Chin Mo flicked his cigarette butt and said, You can sing? Fujio laughed. I'm the current school hunk of number 1 middle school. How can I win without some substance? In fact, when she was still Z, she disguised herself as a resident singer in a bar. Of course, she wouldn't tell this to the Almighty. Then let's invite the current school hunk to sing what you're best at. The coldness in Chin Mo's eyes dissipated a lot. The current school hunk was a joke. Because the previous school hunk of number 1 middle school was Almighty Chin. Some people even predicted that no school hunk could be more handsome than Almighty Chin, whether it was in the past or the next few decades. Until Fujio appeared. There was even a comparison between the two on the school's internet. But the more they compared, the more the topic went astray, and it became a couple. Fujio found it interesting, but she didn't know what expression the Almighty would have when more and more people said he was gay. Fujio had sung quite a few songs when she was a resident singer. She tilted her head to look at the person sitting on the sofa, the person who had been protecting her since they first met. Her fingers slid down and clicked on Mayday's new song. Fu Jiu's singing posture was absolutely professional. Her fingers were on the vertical microphone, and she was sitting on the high chair with a smile on her face. Unlike Qin Mo, Fu Jiu always dressed up for the night. A cool leather jacket paired with a pair of white jeans, silver hair, and pure black earrings. No one would have thought that Fu Jiu was a girl. Just by sitting there, she seemed to be able to generate electricity. She was so handsome that it made people's hearts flutter. Han Susu's gaze was already a little infatuated, and when that young man's unique voice came out, she couldn't take her eyes off Fu Jiu. However, Fu Jiu's eyes were looking at Qin Mo, very lazy and sunny. I want to write a song about you. I want to keep a cat. He wanted to go back to every scene and slow down every watch. We build a castle at the corner of children and adults. Chapter 404. Under the light, the silver-haired youngster held the microphone in his hand and looked at Qin Mo with a smile. His thin lips were very close to the microphone, and all the light in the room seemed to be hitting his lips, gathering into dots of light. Life can't be longer, fireworks fall from the corner of my eyes. The world can't be bigger, you stare at my smile. Among all the passing scenery and people, you treat me the best. Obviously, this song was sung to Qin Mo. Han Feng laughed softly. Qin Mo, your little brother is really good, he knows everything. Qin Mo didn't speak, still holding the wine glass in his hand. Rather than saying that he didn't speak, it was more accurate to say that the moment the youngster opened his mouth, his eyes never left Fu Jiu's body. Even he didn't know what kind of expression he had when he looked at Fu Jiu. Hidden in the darkness, as if no one else was around, he wanted to take her for himself. Jiang Zuo watched from the side. His heart that had been thumping just now began to sink. Qin Mo had never looked at anyone like that. Was he thinking too much, or did Qin Mo really have feelings for Fu Jiu? Jiang Zuo was a smart man. Unlike Qin Mo, he majored in medicine and had seen many people in that circle. He was more sensitive to such things than Qin Mo. Plus, the onlookers saw things more clearly, so he could see things more clearly. Good brother. Which older brother would look at his younger brother like that? Jiang Zuo also knew that some people weren't really gay. Sometimes, it was because their personalities were too similar, and they were always together. Plus, the youngster's face was so handsome that he could ignore his gender. Qin Mo didn't mind being nice to him. So Jiang Zuo was still hesitating if he should point it out. Because if he said it, Qin Mo might think in that direction, and then he would really be gay. He couldn't bear the consequences of the Qin family ending without descendants. But if he didn't say it, and the situation continued. Qin Mo and Fu Jiu. Wait a minute, why did he always think that his friend was more likely to be gay in the future? Thinking of this, Jiang Zuo was also depressed. He wanted to get the wine glass. Qin Mo turned his face and met his eyes, which made Jiang Zuo pause. After all, his friend's indifferent eyes seemed to be able to see through his thoughts. The Han siblings had no idea what was going on. Han Feng was still puzzled. Hey! What's wrong with you two? Why are you looking at each other? Nothing, Qin Mo replied faintly. Han Feng lifted a brow at Jiang Zuo. Really? Jiang Zuo laughed and said, what else could it be? I just think that Fu Jiu's singing is pretty good. Now that he is the school hunk, us former seniors are all standing behind him. Not only does it sound good, it looks good too. Han Feng lowered his voice and moved closer to the two. I'm going to be busy now. Look at Susu. She's about to confess her love in public. She's so infatuated. When Jiang Zuo heard this, he would definitely join in the fun. But ever since he saw Qin Mo's gaze, he subconsciously turned to the left. He hadn't noticed it the previous few times. Chapter 405. Han Susu was still watching Fujio walk down from the stage with a pink face. She didn't notice the change in her surroundings. It could be said that Han Susu had never felt such a thing for anyone in her entire life. She really wanted to see the other party. Even if the other party only said a few words to her and stood beside her. She felt like her heart didn't belong to her. Ever since she was young, she had been surrounded by rich and powerful people. Their looks and temperaments were always superior. The elder brothers of the Qin family and the Jiang family were much more outstanding than their peers. She used to like Big Brother Qin. But she knew very well that once she crossed his bottom line, she wouldn't even be able to get close to him. So she didn't like him anymore. But even if she didn't like him, she still looked down on other people. Those in school couldn't even be compared to these brothers she knew. Until yesterday at number 1 middle school. Han Susu finally felt that there was someone who wouldn't try to please her because of her family background. The young man was very cold to her from beginning to end, and he didn't talk much. But it was that coldness that made Han Susu feel that he was the one she was looking for. So Han Susu threw away her previous arrogance. When Fujio finished singing, she went up and grabbed Fujio's arm. I ordered a duet. You sing the guy and I'll sing the girl. I'm sure you'll like it. Fujio frowned. She usually thought girls were cute, but in fact, she didn't like it when someone approached her so directly. The Almighty was familiar with her, so it wasn't a big deal to touch her. An unfamiliar person. Fujio almost flung Han Susu's hand away in a moment of reflex. You sing first. Han Susu's cheeks were pink. No matter what other people thought, she liked the feeling of standing side by side with the young man. Forget it, since she was the sister of the Almighty's friend. With this thought in mind, Fujio put one hand in her pocket and took the microphone from Han Susu. She was about to sing when a gust of wind blew towards her, and the microphone was pulled out from behind. It was Qin Mo. Fujio wasn't the only one who looked back. Even Han Susu stopped and was stunned. Big Brother Qin. His eyes aren't good. He needs to go home and rest early. Qin Mo's voice was calm, but he was still the chosen one. Just by standing there, he seemed to be able to move. His aura of nobility lingered and he was incomparably domineering. I won't be singing anymore. Han Susu opened her mouth. It's only 9 o'clock. The smog is heavy and it will irritate my eyes if I'm late. Qin Mo tilted his head and looked at Han Susu. At that moment, Han Susu didn't know why, but she felt that his gaze was a little cold. But because that face was too handsome and noble, Han Susu couldn't see anything. On the other hand, Jiang's heart sank when he saw Qin Mo extinguish his cigarette and walk over. Han Susu didn't want the youngster to leave. However, Qin Mo had already opened his mouth. Get dressed. This sentence was directed at Fujio. Fujio smiled and didn't say anything. She casually pulled over her jacket and zipped it up. Qin Mo took the pure black mask from the side and asked Fujio to put it on. Then he nodded at Jiang Zhua and Han Feng who were standing on the sofa, indicating that they should leave first. Han Feng still wanted to say something. Qin Mo had already taken the youngster out of the private room. What? What's going on? Han Feng was really confused. Why are you in such a hurry to go home? Jiang Zhua didn't speak. He looked at the microphone that Qin Mo had placed on the coffee table. His eyes changed, and no one knew what he was thinking. Han Susu was quite considerate of Fujio. Didn't you hear what Brother Qin said? Fujio's eyes are not good, so he needs to go back and rest early. Brother, you heard his singing just now, right? Isn't it very nice? Yes, 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 look at how obsessed you are. Why? Now you don't chase after your Brother Qin and Brother Jiang, but this little brat. Han Feng was still joking, I don't know who said that she doesn't like people of the same age. In her eyes, those high school students are all like children. They are not mature at all. Could it be that this one is very mature? Brother. Han Susu pinched Han Feng and said while pacing, who are you calling a little brat? You haven't seen him fight, he's so handsome. Also, he is different from the people in school, he is very mature. Otherwise, Brother Qin wouldn't recognize him as his little brother. Do you think someone who Brother Qin likes is bad? Huh? He is at the level of a male god. I thought only those Dahan Appas on TV were your male gods. They are not as handsome as him. You will know when you see him fight. Han Susu's heart skipped a beat when she thought of the scene at the school gate today. Han Feng laughed. That's strange. If he is so good at fighting, why does Qin Mo protect his little brother like a doll? When Jiang Zhuo heard this, his fingers paused. He was still thinking about something else. But Han Feng turned around and said to him, Zhuo, you have always been smarter than us, what do you think? Jiang Zhuo first looked at Han Susu's blushing face and then at Han Feng's face. He knew very well that he couldn't say his guess. Especially not to let Han Susu know. Fu Jiu is also a member of the Supreme Alliance. There are only 2 days left before the National League, and the condition of their eyes is very important to them. When Jiang Zhuo said this, he didn't believe it himself. But it didn't matter whether he believed it or not. It was fine as long as the Han siblings believed it. But before he left, Jiang Zhuo still said, Han Feng, tell Susu to give up. It is obvious that Fu Jiu doesn't like her, and this is not a good match. He doesn't like someone like my sister. Han Feng found it funny. Then what kind of person does he like? Jiang Zhuo really wanted to say that the key was not what kind of person the young man liked, but whether Qin Mo would make him like someone. But in the end, he held back and put out the cigarette. Anyway, listen to me. Don't let Susu find Fu Jiu, and don't even think about asking Qin Mo to ask him out. Han Feng saw that he was serious, so he took it to heart. But it was difficult to stop his sister from finding Fu Jiu. Everyone present today should be able to tell that his sister has already fallen in love with him. It seemed that a man who was too handsome could also be a source of trouble. The darker the night, the heavier the haze. The visibility outside was extremely low. So Qin Mo didn't drive very fast. When the domineering Land Rover drove past, it always attracted people's attention. Chapter 406. He thought that he finally understood what Mr. Li meant when he said that his brother would one day be snatched away by some unknown woman. It was very uncomfortable. Especially when he saw that the youngster was going to sing with Su Su, that feeling became even more obvious. Although Qin Mo told himself that he couldn't do this. The youngster wasn't his only possession. He wasn't like those toys he used to fancy. He was a real person. Even so, Qin Mo didn't want to see a similar scene in front of him again. To him, the youngster was just a high school student. The rebellious period of youth was the most vulnerable to external temptations. He was the older brother, so he naturally couldn't let him go astray. Puppy love? That was even more impossible. But what if the youngster really met someone he liked? Would he still stop him? Qin Mo didn't know why, but when he thought of that scene, his chest felt like it was being pressed by a huge rock. It wasn't very painful, and it wouldn't hurt that much. It was just that the pressure made him want to destroy something. Qin Mo thought that he might make a move, even though he knew that it was wrong. But at the same time, he was very clear that the youngster wouldn't do anything to him for a woman. But once he made a move, some things couldn't go back. Qin Mo looked sideways at the youngster with his head tilted. It was probably because the temperature in the car was too comfortable that Fu Jiu felt a little sleepy as soon as she got in. Plus, the Almighty had a calming aura. So Fu Jiu was basically asleep now, but her head was still nodding. Her white pointed chin was exposed, and the black jacket had a circle of fluff around it. Even when he was asleep, he was still extremely handsome. No wonder so many girls liked this guy. Chin Mo parked the car outside the Fu family's villa, but he didn't drive in immediately. Instead, he turned sideways and unbuckled the youngster's seatbelt. He looked down at Fu Jiu, but he didn't retract his arm immediately. Fu Jiu sensed that someone was approaching. But she subconsciously knew that she was in the Almighty's car, and nothing would happen. So she didn't wake up. Instead, she leaned forward as if she were on a plane. Her head fell forward, and she leaned into Chin Mo's side arms. Chin Mo could have easily pushed the youngster away, but he maintained that position and didn't retract his body. Instead, he moved his left hand and held the youngster's face, straightening him up. Fu Jiu moved a little and even slowly found a more comfortable position in his arms. She rested the side of her face on his palm, looking very obedient. Like a cat with its claws removed, it was still handsome, but it was also very silly. His silver hair was still curled up. The soft and delicate side profile made contact with his palms, giving him the illusion that his palms were being burned by light. The youngster's soft and delicate face, and the touch made him feel as if his palm was burning. Because of this action, the previous stuffy feeling seemed to disappear in an instant. Chin Mo lowered his eyes, the reflection of the silver vortex in his deep eyes. Chin Mo's Mo had thought. Didn't Chin? Even if didn't belong to him. Since he was her younger brother, why should she let those girls snatch him away? Chin Mo raised his hand and ran his fingers through the youngster's silver hair. His expression was cold and noble, like a demon in the dark. Chin Mo raised his hand and ran his fingers through the youngster's silver hair. His expression was cold and noble, like a demon in the dark. He ran to the front of the car. Just as he was about to say something, he saw his young master. His young master was throwing himself at young master Chin. Just as he was about to say something, he saw his young master actually throwing himself into young master Chin's arms. At this moment, Chen Xiaodong was invigorated. The smog didn't shock him at all. Nothing could shock him as much as this. No matter how big the blow was, it wouldn't be as shocking as this. Young master, how hard is he going to take things? He is challenging Almighty Chin's endurance time and time again. Chen Xiaodong opened his mouth wide at the stupid scene in the car. Chin Mo saw everything. His deep eyes looked up and met Chen Xiaodong's. His gaze was filled with an oppressive warning. Chen Xiaodong was about to make a sound, but it was stuck in his throat. When he saw Almighty Chin put his slender fingers in between his lips, signaling him to be quiet. Chen Xiaodong could only stand outside the car, not knowing whether to stay or leave. Only then did he realize that his young master was just asleep. Chen Xiaodong heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like he was overthinking. Of course, the premise was that his young master didn't pretend to be asleep. But Almighty Chin was a bit too gentle, wasn't he? At that moment, Chen Xiaodong remembered the bed photos on Weibo. His eyes widened again. Don't tell me that these two people are already dating. Did Almighty Chin really get turned gay by his young master? Chen Xiaodong was still shocked. On the other side, Chin Mo had already made his move. He retracted his body and pushed open the car door. Then he went around to Fu Jiu's side and opened the door on the right. Chen Xiaodong just watched, because he didn't know what to say anymore. Chin Mo bent down with his slender legs and leaned into the car. He put one hand on the side of Fu Jiu's body, and the other hand under Fu Jiu's knees. Almighty Chin wanted to carry his young master out. After realizing this, Chen Xiaodong wanted to say something again. But he couldn't resist Almighty Chin's aura. Just as Chin Mo's breath brushed past Fu Jiu's cheeks and his fingers were about to press above her waist, Fu Jiu suddenly opened her eyes and reached out to hold the man's wrist. Chin Mo stopped and raised his eyebrows at the young man. Fu Jiu yawned lazily. I fell asleep. Slept all the way. Seeing that the young man was awake, Chin Mo naturally retracted his hand and straightened his back. Get out of the car. Put on your coat and mask. Fu Jiu nodded and lowered her head, pretending to fix her mask. In fact, she was relieved. If she hadn't woken up just now, the Almighty would have carried her all the way home. She didn't know what would have happened. That place was getting more and more disobedient lately. The Almighty never thought that she was a girl because it was safer to wear thick clothes. Unlike Summer, it was easy to see through her disguise. But no matter how safe the clothes were, others might not be able to detect it, but if it was the Almighty, Fu Jiu lowered her head and looked at the area above her waist. He would definitely be suspicious if he pressed on it. This cross-dressing thing couldn't be delayed for long. In the past, Fu Jiu hadn't matured yet. Now that she had matured, and after the National League, spring would come after the end of the year. By then, she would be wearing thin clothes. Chapter 407. Fu Jiu sat up straight before getting out of the car. Chin Mo had already noticed that the young man was extremely afraid of the cold, so when Fu Jiu came out, he naturally reached out his hand and zipped up the young man's jacket. Fu Jiu was wearing a mask. She lowered her eyes to look at the fingers that were tidying up her collar, and a faint smile could be seen at the corner of her eyes. In short, from Qin Xiaodong's point of view, his young master had never been so obedient. And Almighty Qin's eyes were lowered, and his black hair fell down. His side profile was so handsome that it was easy to have dirty thoughts. As if his young master was his possession. Qin Xiaodong shook his head, trying not to let his imagination run wild. Fu Jiu didn't think much of it. The Almighty had always been considerate, so she always had the urge to raise an Almighty at home. Unfortunately, Fu Jiu studied Qin Mo's face again and didn't know what to do. Is it nice to stare at me all the time? The Almighty's tone was very indifferent. His eyes were clearly looking at her collar, but he could even sense that she was up to no good. Fu Jiu smiled. Yes, we are the super handsome team. I thought you would say the top student team. Qin Mo took back his left hand and put it in his pocket. He stood tall with his deep eyes and raised eyebrows, which was very demoralizing. Fu Jiu. She couldn't let go of the title of top student. Change the topic. Let's go in for a cup of tea. Fu Jiu rarely invited people. Qin Mo didn't agree. He was a little absent-minded. Nah, go to bed early. Okay, see you tomorrow. Fu Jiu turned her head and glanced at her little butler. Qin Xiaodong quivered immediately and followed her. What made him look back was that Almighty Qin didn't leave immediately. Instead, he leaned against the Land Rover and seemed to be lighting a cigarette. His eyes seemed to be looking in their direction. Fu Jiu sensed it too. She turned around and pointed at her mask at Qin Mo. Qin Mo raised his eyebrows. Fu Jiu pointed at his right pocket. Qin Mo touched it, and his back trembled. The young man had left a mask for him when he wasn't paying attention. This guy. Qin Mo looked at the young man with bright eyes and white teeth in the distance, and the corner of his mouth slowly curled up. Then, in the fog, his eyes were cold and vicious, and a little deep. So, why would he give up such a good brother to someone else? After Fu Jiu's figure disappeared into the night, Qin Mo got into the car. He took the mask out of his pocket and placed it in front of the steering wheel. At that time, the two of them didn't know that there would be such a storm in the unregulated official bar. The rumors against Fu Jiu started in the wee hours of the morning. The Spade fans who didn't know right from wrong started to be led astray. Quite a number of them started to become fans of the road or anti-fans. Official bar was different from official Weibo. If such a thing had happened on the official Weibo account, Manager Feng would have received the news immediately. On the other side of the bar, it was an hour later that Agent Feng received the call. A large number of posts were discussing Spade Z's shortcomings. Some people even started to use Spade Z's name to create groups to trick fans, while the fans who really defended Spade Z were scolded as White Lotuses. Some of them took the opportunity to gain popularity, while others felt wronged because of what they had done previously. All of a sudden, all of them rushed out to criticize Spade Z. But that was not the point. Chapter 408. It was 4:00 in the morning when Feng Yi realized the seriousness of the situation. The country wasn't as open as overseas. In some aspects, many people still couldn't accept it. For example, if Qin Mo and Fu Jiu were flirting with each other, it was okay, but if one of them really liked men, that group of fans was bound to be ostracized. Plus this time, the number of posts was too many. Everyone on the internet knew that there were people in the entertainment industry who specialized in raising anti-fans. These anti-fans would attack as long as they were hired. What made Feng Yi angry was who had done such a thing. There must be someone who could profit from this. The only positive measure he could do was to tell the Big V not to leave. But in the face of profit, some people didn't care. They would touch the edge of the topic if they could. 7:00 in the morning. The bad comments couldn't be controlled and exploded on the official Weibo. Some people from small teams started to stir the water. What was so disgusting? How could there be such a person who liked men? Someone even wrote, "I won't disband Spade Z's fan group since there are people joining." In other words, she was going to continue to use Spade Z's popularity to deceive people. But some people didn't have good judgment and couldn't understand the situation. Some people with bad intentions argued that they didn't use Spade Z's popularity. But the evidence was clear. Their group was created in Spade Z's name and many people were tricked into joining. Since morning, Feng Yi's phone hadn't stopped ringing. All of them were asking him if the post was true. Was Spade Z really gay? Feng Yi didn't let the situation get any worse. But he was very clear that the situation wasn't going well. But what calmed him down was Qin Mo's call. "What's going on?" Qin Mo's voice was still very calm, but there was a layer of coldness hidden in it. After Feng Yi controlled the situation, he said, "Someone exposed the fact that little Spade used to chase a man in school, and some people criticized him for many things after he entered the Supreme Alliance. They want Supreme Alliance to have peace. Then tell them that Supreme Alliance belongs to the Qin group, not anyone else." Qin Mo's side profile was indifferent, but his ruthlessness was bone-chilling. "Supreme Alliance will always have a place for Spade Z. We will live and die together." Feng Yi paused. "Do we really have to be so tough?" Qin Mo didn't say anything. Even through the phone, he could feel the coldness. Feng Yi understood what he meant. He cleared his throat with difficulty. "I'll make a statement now." "It's not just a statement." Qin Mo's eyes seemed to be overflowing with black fog. When his black trench coat was rolled up, he looked like his character in the game, the Grim Reaper. This time, drag out everyone involved. At the headquarters of the Jiang group, Jiang Zhua arched a brow. "That's the reason you came over for tea so early in the morning?" "Yes." Qin Mo's gaze was cold. "Where is he?" Jiang Zhua sighed. "You called me at 7 in the morning and I set it up for you." Chapter 409. On the Fu family's side. Chen Xiaodong wouldn't let Fu Jiu go to school no matter what. Smart as she was, Fu Jiu quickly sensed that something was wrong. She put her hand on Chen Xiaodong's shoulder. "Tell me, what's the matter?" "No, I'm fine." Chen Xiaodong's eyes were still avoiding eye contact. He really didn't want his young master to hear those remarks. Fu Jiu curled up her lips. "Is it about school? What can happen to the school?" Chen Xiaodong didn't realize that he had been tricked. Fu Jiu said, "That's the team's problem." "Chen Xiaodong, give me the tablet." Fu Jiu stretched out her hand, looking very handsome. Chen Xiaodong hugged him tightly. You, Almighty Qin said you can't look at these electronic products. My eyes are fine now. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. Give it to me. Chen Xiaodong shook his head. Fu Jiu smiled. You don't want to give it to me? You want me to molest you? Chen Xiaodong's eyes widened. How could young master do this? Even if he was good-looking, young master couldn't eat the grass by his side. Fu Jiu took advantage of this opportunity to take the tablet from Chen Xiaodong's arms. She previewed very quickly. It was almost 10 lines at a glance. Chen Xiaodong comforted Fu Jiu. Young master, don't take these words too seriously. What do these people know? I'm going to the internet cafe. Fu Jiu didn't wait for Chen Xiaodong to finish and threw the tablet back into his hands. Chen Xiaodong couldn't stop him even if he wanted to. And this time, Fu Jiu didn't go to Yin Wuyao's. Instead, she went to a smaller and closer restaurant. Not leaving a trace in the same place was her usual style of doing things. Even the Almighty didn't know about this. Boss, turn on a computer. This time, Fu Jiu didn't even reveal her face and hair color. She wore a black coat with a hood and just sat in the corner of the sofa. Fu Jiu didn't attack immediately. Instead, she opened Dazzle Dance as a cover. In other words, even if someone passed by behind her, they would only see that she was dazzling. He didn't know what else she had done besides Dazzle Dance. Fu Jiu put on her headphones and placed her hands on the porcelain white keyboard. Da-da-da. The crisp typing sound was like a rapid note, without the slightest pause. For ordinary people, many things might be difficult to distinguish on the internet. Because behind the layers of nicknames, you don't know who that person is. But to Fu Jiu, it was just an IP code. No matter how many times the other party changed their nicknames, they would be able to lock onto their true identity by hacking into their IP address. It was impossible to say that he was not affected. Even Fu Jiu understood why the Almighty was paying attention to her. She, who walked in the dark all year round, could not tolerate the darkness. There was no such thing as absolute white in this world. However, in the dead of night, she couldn't help but want to get it done once and for all. Like killing people. So, she was dangerous. Fu Jiu chuckled and thought of the man's side profile as he fixed her collar with his eyes lowered. You can't make mistakes, right? However, he couldn't let him off easily either. Causing trouble on the internet? Don't you know whose territory this is? Fu Jiu held the lollipop in her mouth. You guys should thank the Almighty. If it wasn't for his beauty, all of you would have gone to hell to accompany the King of Hell. If Hoshino was here at this moment, he would definitely recognize Fu Jiu. On the screen, the white code kept jumping, and the eagle penetrated the firewall. Chapter 410. 9:00. There was a lot of negative news on the official Weibo. Spadezi's departure from Supreme Alliance had become a hot topic. Some fans of other members also started to leave comments after being incited. Dada, you have to stay away from Spadezi, or else I won't be your fan anymore. Lin Feng, Yunhu, Feng Shang, Yin Wuyao, and even Shui Yaoyao's official Weibo all had similar comments. Shui Yaoyao's eyes turned red with anger when she saw those comments. She felt sorry for the young man. She had nothing in this group of people. But because she had nothing, she didn't care. There were no words, but words. She posted a Weibo with the title, The Spadezi You Don't Understand. After clicking on the link, Shui Yaoyao's voice could be heard, very gentle and real. I was a very fat girl since I was young. I wasn't popular in school, and I was even ostracized. I was slandered as a thief. If it wasn't for a young man who appeared and told the public that justice might come late, but it would never be absent, I would still be carrying the crime of a thief for the rest of my life. I'm so glad that he appeared. When someone disliked me for being fat and didn't want to play with me, when everyone laughed at me, this young man used his gentle strength to take me to the esports selection contest, and completed the dream that I could never achieve in my life. I think that is the life I want. If Spade Z leaves Supreme Alliance, I will leave too, because my dream was given by him. Count me in. Feng Shang quickly followed, and when he reposted Shui Yaoyao's Weibo, he sent a very low voice. Actually, I'm very afraid to speak to everyone in this way. You guys should have heard it, I stutter. Because of this problem, there are many things that I don't dare to do, until I met my idol. He said that stuttering is nothing, it's very cute. And, he also likes to call me Baby Feng. If there are people who, because of my relationship with him, they won't be fans anymore, then so be it. Yin Wuyao sat in front of the computer with a cigarette in his mouth. He was the least talkative. I came back because someone told me, so what if I'm old? I can still shock the esports world when I'm old. Since this person is going to be forced out, then I'll come back to be the boss of my internet cafe. The voices of the three of them really brought a lot of shock to the fans. Many people were asking if they were wrong. But how could the Kali team ask them to lower their voices at this time? He immediately sent a message using his alternate account. Supreme Alliance will not be threatened by you. You are just 3 rookies and you have so much to say. Never in their wildest dreams would they have thought that as soon as they said those words, Yunhu and Lin Feng sent a voice message at the same time, using the same official Weibo. Yun Feng couple. *CK your grandpa, they're obviously the Feng Yun couple. Lin Feng was still unconvinced. Chapter 411. We live and die together. Just how good was this team member to make all the team members say such words? Even at the expense of offending the fans. The Kali team was dumbfounded when they saw the situation. In their eyes, there were many things to consider, especially the feelings of the fans. But how dare the other side go this far? They had indeed miscalculated. How could the Supreme Alliance be an ordinary team that would not stick to their morals just because they were afraid of offending the fans? Funny. It wasn't easy for them to be standing here. Because it wasn't easy, they had a bottom line. As Yunhu said, if a team couldn't even be grateful, then the team was finished. Mountains and rivers. The National League. They must go together, no one missing. Because of this voice message. The wind on the internet began to change. People's hearts were made of flesh. Even if they couldn't see right from wrong, they would still be moved by the Supreme Alliance's behavior. The members of the Kali team threw the mouse and were still indignant. Damn it, that Spade Z was almost killed. Should we post another thread? Just as the other person was about to speak, a voice suddenly rang out. No one knew what happened to the internet celebrities in the industry. But at the same time, they posted on Weibo. The title of the Weibo was the same, "Come and see what the Kali team's alternate accounts have done." Almost instantly. This Weibo post was reposted like crazy. How could they not repost it? The same IP was divided into many accounts. First, they pretended to be Spade fans and posted on the official forum. After that, they changed to another account and complained that their posts were deleted. Even the fake Spade fan group was created by them. Why did everyone know so clearly? Because the publisher was very considerate. When posting the pictures, he marked everyone with the same IP address with a red arrow. The most shocking thing was that there was a voice message on it. The content of the voice message was, "Damn it, that Spade Z was so close to dying. Should we post again?" It was a clear conversation, and even the voice could be heard. It wasn't like the Kali team hadn't broadcast before. Even if their fans wanted to speak up for them, they didn't have the face to say anything. He had been caught red-handed. The 2 members of the Kali team didn't know that their computers had been hacked. They didn't know about this Weibo post until someone commented on them. The moment they heard the voice message, their faces turned pale. Who is it? Who recorded my voice? One of them subconsciously shouted. But when she looked back, everyone here was their content staff. How could they possibly harm themselves? Then how did this voice recording get released? At this time, in an internet cafe street on West Street, the black-masked youth's fingers flew across the keyboard, and several computers around her entered a state of attack. Even the owner of the internet cafe didn't know when his machines had been charged and started operating. How strange. As his voice fell, Fujio put on the hood of her coat and stood up from the chair. Chapter 412. F***CK. The owner of the internet cafe didn't know what was going on. He kept hitting the computer mainframe. Fujio had already walked out of the alley. The trend on the internet had completely changed. But the Cali team was shameless to the extreme. They didn't want to admit it even after being exposed. Maybe they were confident that they wouldn't be responsible for what they said on the internet. But was it true? Not necessarily. Don't treat everyone as fools. Some people were indeed confused. But that was only a very small number of people who had bad values. Under the trend, everyone asked the Cali team to come out and apologize. They used my Big Spade's name to build a fan group. They said they were supporting me, but they were actually slandering me. Who gave you the right to be so arrogant? One person with multiple accounts just to make my Big Spade leave the Supreme Alliance. What a good scheme. Such a team doesn't have the qualifications to participate in the national competition. What a sharp contrast. Look at the Supreme Alliance and then look at you. You are all esports players. Can't you just play games? Why do you have to harm others? Upstairs, you don't understand. First, they used Spade to attract fans, and then they drove Spade away. In the end, they were the ones who benefited. I saw the screenshot and listened to the recording. How despicable. I only have one word for the Cali team. Get out. The girls who refused to admit it didn't even dare to turn on their computers after being bombarded with comments. What's wrong with this group of people? I also saw that they are not Spadesy's fans. Does this have anything to do with them? Only an idiot would ask such a question. Perhaps the Cali team would never understand it. Anything that touched the bottom line, people would always stand on the side of justice. It didn't need anyone to organize it, and it didn't need to be anyone's fan. It was human nature. Who didn't have a passionate heart? Except for Lioli and the others. Captain, what should we do now? If this goes on, my live broadcast tomorrow will be terrible. Things had come to this point, and there were still people thinking about her live broadcast. Lioli's eyes were gloomy. After all, she had always been the queen of otaku. She had never been scolded like this. It was all because of Spadesy. That recording. How did it come out? Thinking of this, Azure threw the mouse heavily. A loud bang was heard. The whole club fell silent. The members didn't dare to speak. Lioli took a deep breath, fiddled with her long hair, and said, "Apologize." Apologize? How could he apologize for such a thing? Once they apologized, they wouldn't be able to compete anymore, right? Lioli looked at the faces of the whole team and said slowly, "Now that things have happened, someone has to take responsibility. Since we accidentally said something wrong and were caught red-handed, we should apologize publicly for the sake of the Cali team." At this moment, the entire team finally understood what their captain meant. What Lioli meant was that whoever released the recording on Weibo should apologize. In other words, they had to sacrifice the two of them for the benefit of the entire team. The two girls who hated Fujio so much just now were stunned. They couldn't believe their ears. "Captain, you were the one who said we could." Chapter 413. Then, she glanced at the whole team. I think everyone has the same idea as me. After all, the National League is coming. Or do you want all of us to leave with you? That's impossible. Yes, impossible. Someone walked over and said, go and apologize if you're so careless. That's right. Don't drag us down. We still have to compete. The two girls really couldn't describe their feelings at this time. They never thought that their team members would use the method they used on Spade Z to deal with them. It was obvious that everyone had done this together. Why did they say that they were dragging everyone down? Just because their voices were recorded? You. I won't apologize. One of the girls shouted, if you want to apologize, everyone should apologize together. Lioli stood at the side, her face expressionless. That's not up to you. Turn on the computer, the accounts should be automatically logged in. At this moment, the two girls realized that they had to do it. Because, from the moment the accident happened, not only their captain, but also their teammates who were good friends had decided to make them the scapegoats to take the whole thing. That's right, how could they have forgotten? Not all teams were like Supreme Alliance, able to live and die together. Lioli had a good plan. After the two team members released the news, she went on Shangguan Weibo. Only then did she go on Shangguan Weibo. The statement read, there is a problem with the Cali battle team. As the captain, I also have some responsibility. I didn't realize in time that there would be such people around me. Now, I have removed the problematic members from the Cali battle team. I have also set up evidence. It had to be said that Lioli's move was beautiful. Because soon, there would be people comforting her. Even some of Spade Z's fans felt that she didn't have any responsibility for this. This attitude was very good. But was it really like this? Obviously not. But Lioli still missed one point. Yun, who had already said in the message that Almighty Qin was busy with other things. Since he had decided to make a move, of course, he wouldn't let it go. It was almost 10 o'clock. In a Starbucks coffee shop in a shopping mall. A person was still looking down at his phone and computer. He seemed to specialize in this industry. The Weibo page was still open on the screen. However, his mind wasn't on that at the moment. The direction of the internet had already begun to change. No matter how hard he tried to pull it back, it would be difficult. It was all that Shui Yaoyao's fault. When she wrote that paragraph, many people would resonate with her. That would be wasting the best opportunity to attack. However, what puzzled him the most was the message that he had posted on his Weibo. He had been paid to spread Spade Z's information. Why would they post something about the Cali squad? During those 5 minutes, he couldn't log into his account no matter how hard he tried. It was the same for his friends. All of them showed abnormalities. What was going on? Even if he wanted to help the Cali team, he could not. That was his boss. However, his boss was pretty good, especially Captain Lu Li, who knew how to speak. Pushing two people out to appease the anger of the masses was the right thing to do. Looking at the storm on the official Weibo account that had basically subsided. The man picked up the phone and glanced at it. Strange, why isn't the big client here yet? As soon as he finished speaking, there was a swoosh. The chair in front of him was pulled out. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.